Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Badlands Media Live. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. I went live because they have gone live at the White House. Nothing has happened yet, but let me just pull it up. We just want to be on standby, so as soon as they take the podium, we're here and covering it. So for those who are just joining for the first time, we got rug pulled as we get rug pulled a lot in this information war. We got rug pulled this morning because there were supposed to be, normally when foreign leaders come to meet with Trump, they do a bilateral meeting is what they call it in the White House. Those are the videos you see of like Trump and the other guy sitting in chairs in front of the fireplace. The sofas are flanking them. On one sofa, you got Trump's cabinet members. On the other sofa, you got the other country's administration. And then you have the press kind of like surrounding all of them. So normally what happens is you get that in the morning, and then they break, they go have lunch together behind closed doors. And that's where like the negotiation is taking place. And then it kind of varies. Like sometimes it'll be hours later. It'll be 4:00, like 4:30. They'll do the actual press conference, which is what we're about to watch, the two podiums, and they announce whatever it is that they were negotiating. Sometimes it happens right after lunch at 1:15. That's what this one is. So they didn't do a bilateral meeting in the Oval Office, or they did, but as I pointed out, we have it right here. Here's Trump's official schedule from the White House website. It says President participates in a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister of Israel 11:35, and it says closed press, and then it says President participates in a bilateral lunch with the Prime Minister of Israel, closed press. And the fact that they're both closed press, like that's like the lunches are always closed off. I think maybe one or two of them were public, but most of the time they're private, and that's where they actually negotiate stuff. So we got rugged on the Oval Office meeting. I think that is a sign to me that there was some serious discussion happening that Trump did not want public. Addressing down of Netanyahu would be my guess. Trump kind of telling Netanyahu how it was going to be. And again, as I said this morning, I really think that we're going to see Trump come out here and just do what he's been doing up until now and like slap Netanyahu on the back and be like, Bibi's my guy. Like, he's my guy. We support Bibi. And Netanyahu's going to nod his head and be like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like, we appreciate everything Trump is doing. We want peace. Yes, sir. And what we pieced together this morning is that, and last week, is that Trump has presented a 21-point peace plan to the Arab leaders. The Arabs called for the Saudis and the Qataris leading a coalition of not just Arabs, but Muslims. Turkey was there. Pakistan was there. Indonesia was there. Those are not Arab nations. They are Muslim nations. They all met with Trump at the UN after Trump gave his speech in New York. And we got like some images of them meeting, but we didn't actually get any information out of the meeting other than a few days later it leaked that Trump assured them that he wasn't going to let the West Bank get annexed, which is what is happening right now. Netanyahu has signed something called the E1. Man, the sound on this is terrible. I really hope they fix that. The E1 settlement agreement declaration, which says that Israel is going to annex the eastern part of Jerusalem, which, that is a highly symbolic move. And then they declared when they signed it that they were going to annex 85% of the West Bank. And that's not Gaza. This is what the West Bank. Uh-oh, I'm getting text messages. It's never good when I'm getting text messages. Okay, never mind. What's up, dude? Whenever people text me during the stream, I always think, I'm muted or something's wrong. but it was something unrelated. And so Trump promised them that he wasn't going to let Bibi annex the West Bank. And then we got this 21-point peace plan that I don't think we've seen the details of it. We just have been told a few things from it. But one of the things is basically Trump taking the language from the New York Declaration. The New York Declaration was that meeting that the Saudis organized with France, between the French, the Saudis, the Arab League, and 17 countries, like the Arab countries in the Middle East. And they all went and met in New York in July. And they put together this thing saying the Muslim world formally denounces and disavows the October 7th attack. We disavow and denounce Hamas. We demand that Hamas surrender to the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority was at that meeting as well. They surrender to the Palestinian government, turn over their weapons, because they are not the Palestinian government. It's very important. The media never explains this to anybody. But Gaza is controlled by Hamas because they won an election in 2006, and then immediately drove the Palestinian government, the security forces, out of Gaza. And then they started fighting the IDF. So they have to surrender to the Palestinian Authority, turn over their weapons, release the hostages. And then Trump is saying that he will allow the leadership to leave Gaza safely, safe passage to any country they want. Any fighter who fought in Hamas can stay with amnesty if they agree to live in peace, or they can get free and safe passage to a third country. We just went black on the feed, so I don't know what that means. Let me see if I can find another one. AP may have just screwed everything up. Now they're cutting back to the front of the White House. Okay, something has gone terribly wrong here. 1 minute. Fake news does not know what they're doing. The only thing that the White House has posted is just this 1 minute clip on their YouTube page. Is the 1 minute clip of Trump meeting Netanyahu.
Mr. President, should we expect a deal today?
Jessica, if you are in the chat, please help me find a good feed for this. I'm searching every source I can find. And anyone else, if you're out there, if you have a feed, just feel free to throw it in the chat as well.
Mr. Prime Minister, have you agreed to the deal?
Okay, so here's Forbes. Why does Forbes has the feed, but nobody else does? Let's see what Fox News has. AP is just back outside. Did AP get kicked out of the White House? That might have actually happened because they're filming the front door of the White House as if something's going to happen there. Oh, we got somebody at the podium on Fox News, but this guy looks like he's just doing a mic test.
Check 1 2. Hey. Audio check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Audio check 1 2 3 4 5 6. Audio check 1 2 3 4 5.
Fox News seems like they're a few minutes ahead of Forbes.
4 5 6. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Hey. Audio check 1 2.
They're still doing the mic test, so they're not going to come out at least for a minute or two. I was going to play this video that I released a year ago from the boss meeting, but I don't think we have time. I think that'll end up just creating problems. So
check 1 2 3 4 5
But it is important to know that on May 3rd, 2017, Trump hosted Mahmoud Abbas, Palestinian president, in the Oval Office and promised him that he was going to help him liberate Palestine effectively from Netanyahu. And this is, I think we're going to see him fulfill that promise, but that probably is going to happen in stages. It's probably not going to happen all at once today. I've noticed that they slow roll this stuff. And I think they do that for a number of reasons. I think they do that for a number of reasons, but White House hasn't gone live on X yet. Hasn't gone live on YouTube. Everyone's saying RSBN, but I mean, every time I always go to RSBN, they always are just doing commentary like I'm doing. So I'm going and checking right now, but BN is just doing the same thing we're doing. They're looking at the exact same feed. Just, you know, we can give our own commentary if that's what we're gonna do. Everyone's still up and about, so maybe I will just play this video. What do y'all think? Yes, everybody who's still posting about RSBN, I had the RSBN feed up, but they're looking at the same thing I'm looking at, and they're just doing commentary. So I'm not gonna, for a number of reasons, I'm not gonna play their commentary because that would be inappropriate. And we can also provide our own commentary respectfully. We can provide our own commentary. Brett Hour asks, is RSBN Uniparty or MAGA? To be honest, I don't really watch enough RSBN to know. I've seen them put out plenty of good stuff, you know, but unfortunately, a lot of these things, like outlets like Newsmax and stuff, they carry the water of the warmongering neocon party. Like they carry the water of Putin is evil. We have to fight Putin. We have to fight Maduro. We have to fight Xi. And I just don't put up with that nonsense anymore. All that stuff is just bullshit. It's lies. They're lying to you. Putin has been the good guy since the day he came into office. And the reason that Fox News hates Putin, this is a very important thing to understand. The reason Fox News hates Putin is because Putin drove George Soros out of Russia in 2003. The Open Societies Foundation was forced to close the doors on their Moscow office. I think it was November 5th, 2003. It was definitely November 2003. That's why Fox News hates Putin. And if that sounds odd to you, and that sounds like, well, why would Fox News be upset about that? Because it is a uniparty, and Fox News is part of the uniparty. They actually yelled at Newt Gingrich in 2020 for talking about George Soros on Fox News and said, well, you can't talk about George Soros. I don't understand why you talk about George Soros. You know, even Sean Hannity got a tongue lashing for calling in 2020 for calling Bernie Sanders Bolshevik Bernie. You know, they yelled at him for being an anti-Semite. Why is that anti-Semitic? Well, because the Bolsheviks were all Jewish. It's just a historical fact. Even Putin has said that. You know, so the more you dig into history and pull up the threads, the more you learn about things that just make you go, huh? It doesn't make any sense. The Bolsheviks were enemies of Israel as well. But there's a lot of nuance there that's important to understand. But we're not going to get into all that this moment. I'm just looking around to see if we got any better feeds, but I think everyone's looking at what we're looking at right now. All right, I put this out on the X, but let me just make sure I'm posted to Telegram too. I'm gonna throw the if y'all don't mind, I'm gonna throw the X link in chat. Just give this a boost. Let's get people in here. Well, that's an interesting. Okay, I want to. Okay, there's some interesting things that are happening right now that I want to share. Um, while we're waiting, let's look at this. This is Bannon covering this on War Room this morning. I'm just waiting for it to load. Sorry. Not missing anything yet.
And I'll ask Brian, but I've never seen it. I've never seen this without the colors in a color guard. So we have to get an answer for that. It's 11:15, 11:20. This will start, as we said, Netanyahu's there. I think it's the fourth or fifth time.
And the 21-point plan, is everyone on board?
So you saw the media shouting questions right there. And I'll ask Brian, but I've never seen it.
So that is interesting. There's another little news. Bit of news. Sorry, while I'm talking, I'm just making sure that we're posted everywhere. The other one is this. I'll go ahead and share it. Oh wait, it was on this tab right here. This is from Megatron. Megatron, I've had some back and forth with Megatron. Megatron, I'm skeptical about that. This guy is actually like an earnest. He's like an anti-Israel, like pro-Zion, like anti-Zionist, like pro-Arab account. But he puts out a lot of like boneheaded material. Like he like paints MBS as like the bad guy and like an Israeli puppet and all that stuff. So I don't entirely trust this guy. He also never links his sources, which is why I never like boost his content or take him seriously. Because this is what he does. He takes, instead of just like linking the article, or at least just doing a picture of like the Israeli 12 like article he's referencing, he makes his own little thing and just puts side by sides of the people involved, which is, it's Bush League is what it is. But he does that so that he can churn it out quickly, and he becomes the gatekeeping authority on the news he's putting out. And it's just like, dude, just cite your source. At the very least, just put a link down there. Now, other people are now saying the same thing. I'm seeing this everywhere now, that people are saying that Netanyahu has. But again, are they referencing like Megatron's post because a lot of times these guys will put something out and then everyone else will reference that one guy in this format and be like, but maybe what happened, because remember Trump said he was going to let me see, is Fox News better or is AP better? We'll keep both up and we'll see which one is better. Trump said he was calling Tamim before the meeting. So maybe he called Tamim and then he put Netanyahu, and I was like, Netanyahu, you better apologize right now. I mean, dude, I think the gloves are coming off. I think publicly Trump's going to back Netanyahu. He's going to continue to be Netanyahu's guy, because if he doesn't, Netanyahu's going to lose all of his support and he's going to be out of office. And I think Trump wants Netanyahu in office. Oh, Times of Israel just reported it. So it is. This does appear to be, I mean, Times of Israel is adjacent to state media. I mean, it pretty much is state media in Israel. So if they're reporting it, then that's a pretty good source. And by the way the press works in Israel is that you have to, if you're going to report on certain things related to the IDF and related to certain activities of the government, you have to get approval from certain authorities. Otherwise, you will be considered like subverting national security or whatever. Like there have been outlets that have been shut down. Al Jazeera got shut down in Israel, although I think they are like MI6, Muslim Brotherhood. But like Haaretz, which is the oldest newspaper in Israel, they've been sanctioned by the Israeli government because they're anti-Netanyahu. Looks like Itamar Ben-Gvir. He's a real gem. That one's a real gem, as Trump likes to say. After Netanyahu apologizes to Qatari PM, Ben-Gvir justifies important, just, and supremely moral Doha strike. This is kind of a humiliation ritual that Trump's putting Netanyahu through right now. Total humiliation ritual. Total humiliation ritual right here. Yeah. So my expectation here is that, if you want the whole thing to be exposed, if you want these people to be exposed and you want this vicious cycle of like the Israel lobby controlling America to end, you have to expose the whole thing. Now, what does exposure look like? That's the real question, because Trump calling a press conference and explaining something to the American people, in your experience, in my experience, in our lived experience, how does that normally go over? Not very well, does it? Like in terms of waking up the normies. How many normies have been woken up by Trump holding a press conference and saying Hillary Clinton's a criminal? By saying the Russiagate scandal was a fraud and was a conspiracy, a coup against the country. By saying the CIA is running illegal psychological warfare operations for the past 7 years. He said that in 2023. How many normies have woken up because he did that? None, or very few, right? Like, that's not how you go about doing this. You go about doing it by allowing things to play out in a certain way and letting people show you who they are. I mean, people understand who Mark Levin is now. They understand who Laura Loomer is now. They understand, what Israel is now, who Netanyahu is, right? And then there's the whole geopolitical aspect of how do you bring Israel to heel? Because if you think that Israel controls the U.S. government, and they do, like, don't get me wrong, it's not just the U.S. government, it's every government. And the reason they do that is not because of money. It's not money. If it was as simple as money, then they would, the Qataris and the Saudis would control everybody, the people with the really deep pockets. Not that Israel doesn't have deep pockets. Of course they do. And it's not even Epstein. I mean, I think the Epstein storyline is real. I believe that the trafficking of kids and pedophilia and honeypots is all real, but it goes back way longer than that. It's really more of the Promise software, which I've talked about before. They stole the Promise software in 1983. If you've ever seen I've heard the Octopus Murders on Netflix is a documentary that covers it. I've never seen it. I do plan to watch it one of these days, but they stole the Promise software, which is the prosecutorial management system, management information system, which is what Promise stands for. They stole it from the DOJ in 83. I think it was given to them by some bad actors in the in the Reagan administration. And by that, I mean Edwin Meese, the attorney general, heavily implicated in that situation. You know who his deputy attorney general was? I just recently learned this. Mark Levin, like the same Mark Levin from Fox News, was the deputy attorney general in 1983 when Mossad stole this. And we know Mossad stole it because Inslaw Group, which is the company that created Promise and sold it to the DOJ, licensed it to them, sued the DOJ in the late 80s, and through the discovery, they won the case. They proved in court that the DOJ, basically through negligence, quote unquote, had stolen this or helped facilitate the theft of this software, which was then taken apart, put back together so it looked like it was their own. A backdoor was installed on it, and then it was sold to every government. Inslaw Group did not sell it to any other government except for the DOJ. It was just the DOJ using using this software. This is like a database, like an early AI kind of software that let prosecutors look at cases and be able to quickly cross-reference other cases happening in the country, case law, like all that stuff. So if you were to sell that to a country and then they were to use that software and you had a back door on it so you could basically just access their whole system and you knew who was being investigated for crimes, that's blackmail heaven. I mean, that's as much blackmail material as you're ever going to need. So if you think Israel only has controlled the U.S. government, I have news for you. They control probably most of the governments around the world. And I think over the past 5 to 7 years, it's been a process of decoupling these governments from Israeli control. And that's why you're now seeing more and more governments come out and support Palestine and support the Palestinian state, is because enough people in key positions are no longer being blackmailed by the Israeli government. But again, you have to let this stuff play out to a certain extent in order to let them show the world who they are. Yeah, okay. There's someone in the chat trolling and angry. Look, dude, I'm gonna let you hang out if you want to hang out, but if you're just gonna sit here and just be like an angry troll, I'm gonna boot you for the stream, just for the stream. You can come back in the next show. I don't like to silence people who disagree with me. I just let them. I like to talk to them about it. But you got to understand something, man. A lot of people who are unwilling to see the things that I have presented, and you're sitting there talking about Q and all that. Yeah, like I think the Q stuff is very compelling. I think it's probably real. But anyone else who follows my stuff will tell you that I don't reference that. Like I don't rely on that to be my proof when I walk through stuff. I like to look at things from other angles. I think there are other angles that substantiate what I'm saying without having to talk about Q. So if you're going to sit here and call and do that, and just because you're angry and upset, I get why you're frustrated. I get why you're mad. We're all mad about it. Okay. But we need to take a step back, take a deep breath, not get so excited about it, and calmly look at the situation and figure out how we're going to navigate our way out of it. And just saying that Trump is a Jewish puppet is not an answer. It's not the answer, because it's not true. There's enough evidence to suggest it's not true. If it was true, they would have already annexed the West Bank. They haven't done that yet. They're not going to do that. So if Netanyahu just called this guy and apologized to him, then it is what it is. So. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to go ahead and let me see if I can get this thing loaded up fast enough. I'm just going to go ahead and play this video. It's a 6-minute video. While we wait, I don't know. And I'm going to keep an eye on the whole time while this is while we're waiting for this to get started. And if they cut to it, if they go and cut to it, I will I'll cut us out of the video and take us straight live. Just waiting for it to load. Heather Jones asking for a history lesson. Yeah, here's a short history lesson. This video will take you back to 2017. And then in the video, I kind of explain going back to 93. But this has been a long process. This is a long thing, and it's not untying a Gordian knot. It's not as simple as just picking up the sword and cutting the knot. That's people want simple, easy, quick microwave dinner solutions. And if you want this thing to be long term, and you don't want it to come back in 5 or 10 years and retake over, like take everything back over, then you got to go about this a certain way. You know, if you don't want Turning Point USA to be the leader of the MAGA movement, which, by the way, for a long time, it looked like that was going to be the case, because I think Turning Point USA is an NGO that was started by deep at least in part started by deep state actors. You got to expose everything. Everything has to be exposed. Okay. So as I said back in December, when Assad got overthrown, I said this is going to be the end of the Republican Zionist neocon establishment. I think I actually said it's going to be the end of Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk is going to have to choose between his reputation and credibility and continuing to support a mission that is clearly antithetical to MAGA and America First. Never thought they would actually take him out, but I do think he was taken out by his own handlers. That's my opinion. And the fact that Nick Fuentes can't see that makes me question Nick Fuentes' discernment, because the fact that he wants us to be spoon-fed the official narrative while also saying the FBI is controlled by Israel and, that Kash Patel is a Zionist puppet. It's like, okay, well, can we have at least consistent logic when we do these evaluations, or are we just going to be emotional teenagers throwing tantrums over and over again? I'm just waiting for this to load. I'm killing time. If I switch to breaking history, I might be able to. Hold on. All right, here we go. Back in 1993, the Palestinian Authority, which is the current government of Palestine, was formed out of the Oslo Accords, which was brought about by Yasser Arafat and Rabin. We've talked about that before. What's interesting is that I've gone and dug into that and watched the videos from the Clinton White House in 1993. Yasser Arafat didn't sign the Oslo Accords. Mahmoud Abbas signed the Oslo Accords. And the reason for that was it was a symbolic gesture by Yasser Arafat, who was the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization. It was a gesture to the West to say, hey, look, we are going to ride off into the sunset because the PLO has been in a bloody conflict with Israel for decades. So we're gonna leave, and we're gonna bring in this new government that's seeking a two-state solution in peace with Israel, run by this guy Abbas. He's gonna be in charge now, and we're gonna leave, like we're gone. And so that's what the whole Oslo Accords was about. Fatah was the leader of Palestinian Authority. Hamas was kind of just like a gangster organization in Gaza. They were kind of nobodies. They then, over the next 10 years, come into power. Netanyahu kind of elevates them, helps them come into power. They win an election in 2006. The first thing they do is they attack Fatah security forces, drive them out of Gaza. Then they turn their attention on IDF, attack IDF, drive them out of Gaza, and they've controlled Gaza ever since.
Here at the White House, President Abbas signed a declaration of principles, very important, which laid the foundation for peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. The President and Mr. President, you signed your name to the first Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. You remember that well, right? And I want to support you in being the Palestinian leader who signs his name to the final and most important peace agreement that brings safety, stability, prosperity to both peoples and to the region.
We know quite well that this is merely the beginning of a journey that is surrounded by numerous dangers and difficulties, and yet our mutual determination to overcome everything that stands in the way of the cause for peace, our common belief that peace is the only means to security and stability.
سيداتي سادتي.
Mr. President, I am taking this opportunity to assure you and to assure the great American people that we share your values for freedom, justice, and human rights, values for which my people have been striving. My people are hoping that this agreement, which we are signing today, will usher in an age of peace, coexistence, and equal rights. Let me address the people of Israel and their leaders with whom we are meeting today for the first time. And let me assure them that the difficult decision we reached together was one that required great and exceptional courage. We will need more courage and determination to continue the course of building coexistence and peace between us.
Mr. President, it's about time for Israel to end its occupation of our people and of our land. After 50 years, we are the only remaining people in the world that still live under occupation. We are aspiring and want to achieve our freedom, our dignity, and our right to self-determination. And we also want for Israel to recognize the Palestinian state, just as the Palestinian people recognize the state of Israel. Mr. President, I believe that we are capable, under your leadership and your stewardship, to your courageous stewardship and your wisdom, we are, and as well as your great negotiating ability, I believe, with the grace of God and with all of your effort, we believe that we can we can be partners, true partners to you, to bring about a historic peace treaty under your stewardship to bring about peace.
Now, Mr. President, with you we have hope.
To start a process. We've spoken to Bibi Netanyahu. We've spoken to many of the great Israeli leaders. We've spoken with many of your great representatives. Many of them are here today for lunch with us. We'll start a process which hopefully will lead to peace. Over the course of my lifetime, I've always heard that perhaps the toughest deal to make is the deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Let's see if we can prove them wrong. Okay? Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Start a process that he hopes will lead to peace. I think that process did start. And, you know, he says, let's see if we can prove them wrong. He says, they say this deal is impossible. Let's see if we can prove them wrong. Well, there's two things to keep in mind. The first is the way he treats Mahmoud Abbas in that moment is extremely telling. It also aligns with this. This is an interview. This is a 1-minute clip from the interview I was referencing earlier that happened in December of 2021 between Trump and Israeli journalist Barak Ravid. He's a former Unit 8200 veteran, which is Israeli intelligence, like military intelligence. He's a journalist now for Axios. Does not like Netanyahu. He's made that very clear. He doesn't think Netanyahu is good for Israel. He seems to be the journalist that Trump's like go-to guy in Israel when he wants narratives deployed. Interestingly enough, this interview where he like says all this bad stuff about Netanyahu from 2021 was aired all over Channel 12. You can see the graphic here in the upper right-hand corner. Channel 12 in Israel. You can see all the Hebrew on screen here in a second. Listen to what he says about Mahmoud Abbas. This gets played to the Israeli people. It never airs in America. You got to ask yourself, why is that? Maybe because Trump wants the Israelis thinking one thing and Americans thinking the other another. Like, rather than telling the Americans he doesn't like Netanyahu, he's just going to let Netanyahu be himself. But listen to this.
I thought he wanted to make a deal more than Netanyahu. And I will be honest, I had a great meeting with him, Abbas, right? I had a great meeting with him. And we spent a lot of time together, talked about many things. And it was almost like a father. I mean, he was so nice. Couldn't have been nicer. And after meeting with Bibi for 3 minutes, I looked at him and said, "You don't want to make a deal, do you?" And he said, "Well, and the fact is, I don't think Bibi ever wanted to make a deal.
Why?
I thought the Palestinians were impossible, and the Israelis would do anything to make peace and a deal. I found that not to be true. I think
So
that
this is all for him. This is all saying, I want peace. It's all just, rhetoric.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's politics. I stopped Bibi in the middle of a sentence. I said, "Bibi, you don't want to make a deal." Because I told him I had a very good meeting with Abbas. We can definitely do a deal.
And what the answer when you tell him that?
Well, let's think about it. Let's not move too fast. After he started talking, I said, "Wait a minute. You don't want to make a deal."
That interview was from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, 1 year after Trump left office. Okay. And remember, who called Joe Biden? Who was the first person who called Joe Biden and congratulated him on defeating Donald Trump? It was Benjamin Netanyahu. And Trump said he would never forgive Netanyahu for doing that. So you think that he's Netanyahu's puppet? You're not really paying attention. You're buying into the Fox News headlines too much. You're buying into the CNN stuff too much. It's like, stop reading that crap because it doesn't actually tell you what's going on. And then if we go here, do you remember what happened last year when Netanyahu came to the White House and addressed the two houses, like the joint session of Congress? Or he didn't come to the White House. He came to Congress and he met and he gave the joint session. What did Trump put out the night before? The night before Netanyahu was going to speak. He said, "Looking forward to seeing Bibi Netanyahu on Friday when he comes to Mar-a-Lago, and even more to achieving peace in the Middle East." And he posted the letter that Mahmoud Abbas had sent to him saying, "We're so happy," the day he was shot in the ear. And he said, "We're so happy that we're not killed by that assassination, by that assassin." And then he handwritten letter on top where he says, "Mahmoud, so nice. Thank you. Everything will be good. Best wishes, Donald Trump." And I want you to pay attention to that first video that I played of him and Mahmoud Abbas, May 3rd, 2017. Look at the tie Trump is wearing. Blue with the single white diagonal stripe, right? I have not been able to find another instance of him wearing this tie except for one other day. And that was the day that Netanyahu came, that Friday when he went to Mar-a-Lago last year. He wore the exact same tie. I know that sounds silly, but go find me another video of Trump wearing that tie. You can't find it. There are videos of him wearing a blue tie like that with two white stripes, a little different. Not that exact same tie though. All right, we still got some time because they're up. The people up and walking around now. There's one other thing that I want to play, and then maybe I'll rest my case on this. Okay, so that first video I played for you, May 3rd, 2017. Okay, 17 days after that meeting happens, where Mahmoud Abbas comes to the White House, this happens. He goes and gets the sword dance. 17 days later, he goes May 20th. He goes to Saudi Arabia. He gets the sword dance. Then 2 days after that, he goes to Israel. Watch this video.
It's amazing. I'm the reason everybody fired up this evening. I'm exhausted, barely breathing, holding on to what I believe. And no matter what, you'll never take that from me. My reign is as far as your eyes can see. It's amazing, so amazing, so amazing.
And instead of saying thank you to the United States, they now feel emboldened. Maybe they figure the deal was so good.
Okay, think about what he's saying right here and the way he's staring at Netanyahu when he says they feel emboldened. Instead of saying thank you for everything that we've done. Now, in the context of the conversation, he's talking about Iran. He's talking about the Iran nuclear deal that Obama gave to them in 2015, because this is 2017. But look at the way he's scowling at Netanyahu when he says this.
Maybe they figure the deal was so good, we can do it every time. They can't do it, believe me. But it was a terrible thing for the United States to enter that deal. And believe me, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, that I can tell you.
As far as your eyes can see, it's amazing, so amazing, so amazing, so amazing. It's amazing, so amazing, so amazing, so amazing. It's amazing. I'm a monster. I'm a maven.
Bibi Netanyahu has never been as shook as he is in this moment his entire life. Do you see how uncomfortable and how upset he is right here? And you can't hear what he says right there, but I listened to it. He says, I can tell his cooperation is going to be terrific. And he is like foaming at the mouth mad because Trump just disrespected him in front of the entire Israeli media in Jerusalem. And then watch what Trump does. He stops and just there's like this stare down where they're like sizing each other up. I was like, did you really just say that? You really just said that? Okay, that was funny.
Just so you understand, I never mentioned the word or the name Israel. Never mentioned it during that conversation. They were all saying I did. So you had another story wrong. Never mentioned the word Israel.
How's the visit so far, Mr. President?
I'm amazing. Yeah, I'm all that. If I ain't on my grind,
they're saying all the nice things I promised I was going to do. I never said I was going to do any of that for Israel.
What we did is we brought Netanyahu with us.
I mean, I'm in the twilight zone right now.
Netanyahu, what do you have to say? What do you have to say to Alex Jones right now, Nick Fuentes and Ye? It was bad. It was bad for Trump to meet with Nick and Ye. Okay. I had no idea your voice is going to sound like that, Netanyahu.
So you don't like Benjamin Netanyahu?
I just.
Surprisingly, Alex Jones does like Benjamin Netanyahu and is very supportive of Israel, despite everything else he says.
I heard about this guy 2 weeks ago since like the tweet, and I thought
2 weeks before this, by the way, he was at Mar-a-Lago having dinner with Trump and Nick Fuentes.
He had a funny name. I heard he's like really into, and I thought he had a funny name. I just heard about this guy 2 weeks ago since like the tweet, and I thought he had a funny name. I heard he's like really into like, he's like a super killer and I could die for saying this. So in case this the last time you ever hear from me.
Well, look.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll kind of rest my case there. We're still waiting on this press conference to get started, but yeah. Let's see what else is floating out there, because there's a lot of different angles. But let's listen to Bannon. Bannon said some stuff this morning. I think it's worth listening to.
Years away, though. Most importantly, what was I ranting and raving about when all of a sudden Steve Bannon goes, oh, from a big supporter of Israel to now I'm an anti-Semite? What is that? It was about the Persian War, the 12-day war. And remember, I said, what doesn't make sense here is you have Tulsi Gabbard saying one thing and John Ratcliffe, who basically has a huge relationship with the Mossad, saying something diametrically opposed. And that was, we had to go now. It was so urgent. You had to go urgent, because they're hours away, days away, weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Remember that? Back on that Thursday night when they went and the surprise attack and they tried, it was next day, Friday morning, the show. I started the show saying this was a decapitation move. This was not nuclear weapons. This was decapitation. They killed the negotiators. They tried to decap the Iranian army. They even went after some of the secular leaders. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those folks deserve killing. Okay, I'm very anti mullahs. But there's a way you do things to make sure we don't get sucked into another war. I said at the time it was a bald-faced lie, and I banged on the table over and over and over again. It's a bald-faced lie. And then on Sunday, they bombed Thursday night, Friday morning our time. On Sunday night, he goes on Bret Baier, and Bret Baier says, yo, what was the urgency about? And Netanyahu starts stumbling and, it's urgent. He says, they were 6 months, they were a year away. And I came back on the show on Monday and go, this is the urgency, a year away. We had to go and suck us into a regime change war because they want regime change. It's not about they're using that as a method to get us in here. Well, the Times of Israel, which the New York Times of Israel comes out with a definitive report on the discussions of the war cabinet. And what is the discussion of the war cabinet come out? It was 2 years away. Not 2 weeks, 2 years away. Let me repeat that for the Israel First crowd. You backed up all of his lies, and I haven't heard a peep out of you since the Times of Israel came out with this report about from the minutes of the war cabinet. 2 years away. And now they're questioning, Netanyahu's out questioning, did we get all the nuclear weapons? President Trump said total and complete obliteration. Take your number 2 pencil out, Netanyahu.
Yeah, love Bannon. And he's right. I said that was an inflection point when they bombed when Netanyahu bombed Iran, because that following Monday, Tucker Carlson went on. First, Eric Trump went on in the morning with Bannon and said, my father is the greatest rhino hunter of all time. Nobody has destroyed more Republican careers than my father, which is absolutely true. Paul Ryan was supposed to be the next president, Republican president. And Donald Trump ended his career in 2018, ended his career. He went on to become the president and still is of Fox News. Tucker Carlson comes on in the second hour that day, and that's when Tucker and Bannon together publicly turn on Israel, and they start just attacking Israel and talking about all the reasons why Israel is not our greatest ally, and they've been doing that ever since. But if you're really wondering why is Trump propping up Netanyahu, why doesn't Trump just get rid of Netanyahu and find a more reasonable partner? Well, let me show you who the more reasonable partner is. Here's a guy, Yair Golan. He is the leader of Israel's opposition Democratic Party. They might be getting started here in a minute, but not yet. Here's him over the weekend. This is like the guy, one of the many people who might become prime minister if a new election is held in Israel today.
The next thing we will do, is to put restriction on the social media in a way that not allowed to make brutal propaganda in the social media. Because this is a worldwide problem. And it should be initiated by the United States of America, the place where all the big firms is settled. Facebook and X and all the rest. This is a major problem for democracy all over the globe. And we need to treat it seriously. We can do it.
Okay. So there you have it. This isn't a Netanyahu problem, guys. This is an Israeli cultural problem. And getting rid of Netanyahu is not going to fix it. And holding a press conference explaining to everybody why it's a problem isn't going to fix it either. Sometimes you got to let your enemy play their hand, because that's how you set them up for ultimately their destruction. And by the way, all the conversations that are happening right now, the stuff Steve Bannon's doing, the stuff Tucker Carlson's doing, all of that is only possible because of what has been allowed to play out. None of them would be out there talking about this in these terms if we hadn't gotten to the point where we are right now. So you have to consider that. They all got really quiet and everybody sat down in their seat. So it seemed like they were about to start, and now all of a sudden, like, people are up and walking around again. So we're getting rugged. We are now at it's 2:11, so we are 1 hour almost past when this was supposed to start at 1:15. So you got to wonder what's going on back there that this hasn't come out. They haven't come out and started yet. Trump has a meeting, I think, at 3:30 with or 3 o'clock with the Republicans about the shutdown. So let me check his schedule again. Yeah, 3 o'clock. He has a meeting with the bipartisan leadership of the Senate and the House. So the leaders of the Democrats, the leaders of the Republicans in both the House and the Senate are coming to the Oval Office in 45 minutes. Now, they'll push that back if they need to, but, you know, I don't think they'd be dragging this thing out for no reason. There's something going on back there where nothing about any of this, in my opinion, is going to be clean or easy or simple. And anyone who's telling you that it could be clean or simply easy or simple doesn't understand the gravity of what we're up against and doesn't understand modern warfare. Modern warfare is not guns and bullets and bombs. Modern warfare is what Donald Trump does on social media. That's modern warfare. Winning the hearts and the minds of populations so they will support initiatives. They will change and adjust their culture. They will support going to war when necessary or reject going to war when necessary. More often, the rejection of war, the embracing of peace. They'll stop buying into the ridiculous neocon Fox News talking points about, we have to go to war with the Islamic world. Islam is to blame for all our problems. Who funded the mass migration of Europe and Canada and the United States and Australia? Who funded it? Charlie Kirk talked about it, talked about who funded it. Jewish billionaires, right? Why would Jewish billionaires, even if they're left-wing Jewish billionaires, why would Jewish billionaires facilitate the mass migration of Muslims to the West where they live if they thought that Islam was going to destroy the West and come after Jews? These are questions that are never asked on Fox News. These are questions that are never asked on CNN. But they're important questions. Why is it that the Republican Party starts wars and then the Democrat Party comes in and establishes a welfare state? That's another thing Charlie Kirk talked about. I've seen videos of that. That's the uniparty. Even Charlie Kirk said that. And I mean, you know me, like, I was not a Charlie Kirk fan. I was a big time Charlie Kirk critic. But he talked about this stuff. He was changing, it seems like. I mean, he was evolving his position. And now, of course, he can't evolve it any further because he's dead. Who benefits the most from him no longer being able to evolve his position and ask difficult questions? That's another reason you should go listen to the show that Alpha and I did yesterday. It's a 30-minute show because Alpha, former cop, former Marine, says, when he's investigating a murder case, he looks for motive. And if there's a guy who's suddenly hanging out with his wife, suddenly hanging out with the wife of the victim, and seems to be benefiting from the fact that the husband's gone, and there's even like a financial component to the benefit, or, a professional component or whatever, that guy becomes the number one suspect in the murder case, right? All right, we are now officially at an hour past when it was supposed to start. Let's see what the Times of Israel is reporting now on their live blog. Looks like Bezalel Smotrich, the other awful leader and a security cabinet member. I just pull this up. I'm still watching the feed. I'm just waiting for these people to get started. Bezalel Smotrich compares Netanyahu's apology to Qatari PM to Nazi appeasement. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich condemns Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's apology to Qatar's Prime Minister for Israel's strike on Doha, framing it as appeasement, comparing it to former UK Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's 1938 Munich Agreement with Nazi Germany, which was signed 87 years ago tomorrow. That's interesting because everybody over the weekend was all the neocon Zionist Republicans were comparing Netanyahu's Friday UN speech with Churchill's 1938, 1939, public positions against Nazi Germany, and now his own security cabinet is comparing him to Neville Chamberlain, who was Churchill's opposition. Yeah, so no matter what happens here, even if Netanyahu comes out here today and capitulates to Trump, he can't afford to go back to Israel and capitulate. If he goes back to Israel and capitulate, his security cabinet's going to abolish his government. He's going to be out on the streets politically, and he's going to be prosecuted for the 3 felonies that he's facing. So he has no choice but to go to war. He has no choice but to do some false flags, to pull a monkey out of the hat or whatever, a rabbit out of the hat. Joe Gilmer is asking, what show did Ghost do with Alpha yesterday? It's not a Badlands show. It's on Alpha Warriors Rumble channel. If you go to Alpha Warriors Rumble channel, him and I do a Sunday show, 2:00 Eastern every Sunday. It's called The Middle East in 20 Minutes with Ghost. So it's supposed to be 20 minutes, but a lot of times it ends up being 30 minutes because, it's me. But we covered a lot of topics yesterday. We covered a lot of different topics in 30 minutes yesterday. And one of the things we talked about was that new kid, Brylan Hollyhand, the new Charlie Kirk, and how suspicious it is that, he's basically all over Fox News now. And they're basically trying to convince everyone that he's Charlie Kirk. But he happens to be pro-war. He happens to be, pro-Israel when it comes to bombing every country in the Middle East. So now we're getting quiet again. Seems like something's going to happen. Gotta wonder what they're talking about back there. Yeah, Claire Cat, the Middle East in 20 minutes or so. Yeah, it's normally more than 20 minutes. I don't think we've ever done it in less than 20 minutes. That's for sure. Okay, so here's like an op-ed analysis article from Times of Israel. While we wait for this press conference to start, Gaza discord is Netanyahu scrambling ahead of DC meet, but Trump offers him way out. Netanyahu clears schedule to avoid another Oval Office surprise, while president's plan to end war looks like PM's best option for day after, yet requires Hamas to go along with its own defeat. It's gotten super quiet, so they might be starting. It says throughout the 8+ minutes of or months of U.S. President Donald Trump's second term, Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has boasted about how tightly coordinated the two world leaders are. We are both in full cooperation, etc. I'm just trying to get the gist of what this guy is saying. It says Netanyahu's allies in the settler movement and on the far right are calling publicly for him to ignore Trump and move ahead with annexation of the West Bank, a fundamental priority for them. And in what might be the most glaring indication that Netanyahu anticipates disagreements during Monday's meeting, he belatedly canceled his public appearances on Sunday to huddle with top advisors in preparation for the White House visit. It seems the prime minister learned his lesson from his last-minute April trip to the Oval Office, in which he agreed to hurry to Washington from Budapest, only to discover he had walked into a series of unpleasant surprises from Trump. Well, there you go. Sorry, I'm checking back in on this press conference because it just keeps getting dead silent, and everyone starts talking again, and then dead silent. All right, it seems like something might actually be happening now. So, before we go back to it, a way out while he's putting the Israeli leader in an uncomfortable position. Trump is also offering Netanyahu a way out of the tight corner into which he has backed himself. Without the Trump plan, it's hard to imagine any end to the war in Gaza in the foreseeable future. What this guy's ignoring is that, all right, here we go. People are coming out. My guy's ignoring that. So there's Witkoff, there's Kushner. I think that's Rubio and Vance in front of them who just came in. There's Caroline Leavitt. Not exactly sure who that is. All right, looks like it's showtime. I'm going to pull myself out and let this just run on its own, but stick around. I'll do some post-game analysis when we're done. Who's that? Susie Wiles? Halo Daisy, I see in the chat, you said you have a lot of questions about Susie Wiles, and I would agree with you. There is a really interesting little fact about Susie Wiles that was recently revealed that is very telling. about what might actually be going on here. I'll share that maybe in the post game analysis. Trump keeping everyone on their toes here. Check my messages. Oh, thank you, Jessica. I think I will cut to that. Let me see. All right, we're going to cut to this one. Good call.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
Thank you very much, everybody. So this is a big, big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. Things that have been going on for hundreds of years and thousands of years. At least we're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job. We've worked well together, as we have with many other countries, both of us, with many other countries, which is the only way this whole situation gets solved. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East. So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East. And let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East. So this is far more than anybody expected, but the level of support that I've had from the nations in the Middle East and surrounding Israel and neighbors of Israel has been incredible, incredible. Every single one of them. This afternoon, after extensive consultation with our friends and partners throughout the region, I'm formally releasing our principles for peace, which people have really liked, I must say. And these are done, not just routinely done, these are done with total consideration and working with the nations that we're talking about. All of these nations have made contributions to those suggestions. I want to thank the leaders of many Arab and Muslim nations for their tremendous support in developing the proposal, along with many of our allies in Europe. Europe has been very much involved, and as I was called by many of the European leaders, most of them saying, is this true? Are you really doing peace in the Middle East? This is the most incredible thing we've heard. Some think it's the biggest thing they've ever heard. They called just to find out, was it just a rumor or is it actually done? And then they said, have you spoken to the Arab leaders? Have you spoken to all of the other leaders that we have to get? A lot of people involved in this one. I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, and begin a new chapter of security, peace, and prosperity for the entire region. And I want to just say that my meetings and dialogue that we had with so many countries, Saudi Arabia as an example, the king is a phenomenal person. the Emir of Qatar, these are incredible people. UAE, and that's MBZ and ABZ. We're totally involved. These are the people that we've been dealing with and who've been actually very much involved in this negotiation, giving us ideas, things they can live with, things they can't live with. Pretty complex. I mean, after 2,000, 3,000 years, whatever it is, I guess it's got to be a little complex, or it would have been done a long time ago. The King of Jordan was with us, as you know, in the United Nations. The President of Turkey, President Erdogan, is a friend of mine, a strong man, but a good man. President of Indonesia, somebody who's an amazing leader, Prabowo. He is an amazing leader and respected by everybody. He was in the room with us. We were together with most of these people that I'm mentioning. Others were by phone or the next day. The Prime Minister and the Field Marshal of Pakistan, they were with us right from the beginning. Incredible. In fact, they just put out a statement that they fully believe in this pact. It just came out just as I was walking around. They said, sir, you have a big notice from the Prime Minister of Pakistan and from the Field Marshal that they back this 100%. President El-Sisi of Egypt, who's terrific. And these are people I've gotten to know over the years. I mean, I would say it started around 2015 and then went into 2016 when the presidency officially began. But I've known him actually for a long time, and there are many cases really great men. I can't say in all cases, but I will tell you in many cases, they're great men and some great women too. They tend to be mostly men, however, I will say that. But if accepted by Hamas, this proposal calls for the release of all remaining hostages immediately, but in no case more than 72 hours. So the hostages are coming back, and I hate even saying this from the standpoint, doesn't sound right, but it is so important to the parents. The bodies of the young men, I believe in almost all cases, the young men are coming back immediately. I met with parents. The parents felt as strongly about getting the body of their dead boy back as they did as though the boy were alive and well. It's so important to them. And it means the immediate end to the war itself, not just Gaza. It's the war itself. Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it. The people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. Decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing. And destroy all terror infrastructure, including the tunnels, weapons, production facilities. They have a lot of production facilities that we're destroying. They'll also help train local police forces in the areas that we're discussing right now, in particular in and around Gaza, working with the new transitional authority in Gaza. All parties will agree on a timeline for Israeli forces to withdraw in phases. They'll be withdrawing in phases. No more shooting, hopefully. As progress is made toward achieving these goals, Arab and Muslim nations need to be allowed the chance to fulfill these commitments of dealing with Hamas. They have to deal with them because they were the one group that we have not dealt with. I haven't dealt with them. But the Arab countries are going to, and Muslim countries are going to be dealing with Hamas, and I believe they've already been there. I think they probably have an understanding, and they haven't maybe mentioned that, but I would imagine they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone as far as they've gone. If they're unable to do so, then Israel would have the absolute right and actually our full backing, U.S. full backing. Marco's here. A lot of our leaders are here, our great vice president, Susie Wiles, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. They've been so involved in this process. I don't think anybody else could have done it or even come close. But it's we're right there. We're right there. First time in thousands of years, I think you can probably say, if you really look into it, if you study back, if you're a scholar, you would say thousands of years. Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. But I hope that we're going to have a deal for peace. And if Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left. Everyone else has accepted it. But I have a feeling that we're going to have a positive answer. But if not, as you know, Bibi, you'd have our full backing to do what you would have to do. Everyone understands that the ultimate result must be the elimination of any danger posed in the region, and the danger is caused by Hamas. The tyranny of terror has to end, and this is, again, something that we're looking for. This is eternity. This is for forever. To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right. And we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board. And one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man, very good man, and some others. And they'll be named over the next few days. And it'll be quite the board. Working, everybody wants to be on it now. I don't know if that had anything to do. They named me and everybody else wanted to be on it. I guess they figure, well, he's a soft touch. He'll be easy to deal with. Working with the World Bank and others, it will be responsible for recruiting and training a new government that will be made up of Palestinians along with highly qualified experts from all around the world. Hamas and other terrorist factions will play no role in the board, but they'll play no role in the governance of Gaza at all, directly or indirectly. As you know, thousands of Hamas leaders have been killed and soldiers have been killed. And we can never forget October 7th, but thousands have paid the price for that. And now it's time to get our hostages back and get back to trying to build something that's really great and very important. In our meeting today, Prime Minister Netanyahu was very clear about his opposition to a Palestinian state. And he continuously mentions October 7th, and I understand that. Most people do. And I understand and respect his position on many things, but what he's doing today is so good for Israel. I noticed that they have large crowds gathering in Israel all the time, and they have my name up. They like me for whatever reason, maybe I don't know, but they do like me. But they say two things: please get the hostages back, and please end the war. They've had it. It's had it. So I think it's a very popular thing you do, because he's a warrior. He doesn't know about getting back to a normal way of life, but he is a warrior, and Israel's lucky to have him. But now the people want to get back to peace. They want to get back to normalization in a true sense. Several countries have foolishly recognized the Palestinian state. As you know, some of our European friends, allies, good people, but they're really, I think, doing that because they're very tired of what's going on for so many decades. They've been presidents and prime ministers for years, and during this time, having to do with the Middle East, all they're doing is talking about the same thing over and over. They want to see it get back. And nobody wants that more than me, or I believe Bibi too. But the people of Israel want it. They really want it. They want the hostages back. That includes the probably 32 bodies that we're talking about, 20 people that are living, 32 or so people that are dead, and they want to have peace. So let us not forget how we got here. Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people. Israel withdrew from Gaza thinking they would live in peace. Remember that a long time ago, they withdrew. They said, you take it. This is our contribution to peace. But that didn't work out. That didn't work out. It was the opposite of peace. They pulled away. They let them have it. And I never forgot that, because I said, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me. As a real estate person, I mean, they gave up the ocean, right? Ron, they gave up the ocean. They said, who would do this deal? And it still didn't work out. They were very generous, actually. And they gave up the most magnificent piece of land in many ways in the Middle East. And they said, all we want to do now is have peace. And that request was not honored. Instead of building a better life for the Palestinians, Hamas diverted resources to build over 400 miles of tunnels and terror infrastructure, rocket production facilities, and hid their military command posts and launch sites in hospitals, schools, and mosques. So if you went after them, you'd be after them, and you wouldn't even realize you ended up knocking out a hospital or school or a mosque. That terrible thing, terrible, terrible way to have to fight. No fight is good, but that's a real bad one. So there are many Palestinians who wish to live in peace. Many, many, many. I've seen so many of them, and they have support. And I challenge the Palestinians to take responsibility for their destiny, because that's what we're giving them. We're giving them responsibility for their destiny, fully condemn and prohibit terrorism and earn their way to a brighter future. They don't want the life that they've had. They've had a rough life with Hamas. If the Palestinian Authority does not complete the reforms that I laid out in my vision for peace in 2020, they'll have only themselves to blame. We're giving them an amazing footprint, and they have amazing support from the leaders of the Arab world and the Muslim world, the great leaders. These are great leaders. These are unbelievable leaders that have built great countries and very wealthy countries. What the future holds for the Palestinians, no one really knows, but the plan that we put forward today is focused on ending the war immediately, getting all of our hostages back, getting everything back. Hard to believe when you even say it, and creating conditions for durable Israeli security and Palestinian success. Israeli security is going to be involved. We're going to help you. We'll be there with you in terms of helping with security. We want to make sure it works. We just want to make sure it works. There shouldn't be a shot fired. Now, there will be, I guess, because that's the way it seems to be, but they shouldn't have to be within a few days. There shouldn't have to be a shot fired. Maybe for eternity. Wouldn't that be nice? I hope it's true. I can tell you the leadership of that region feels that there's a good chance of it being true. So this will lead to this agreement that we're talking about will lead to a sustainable long-term peace. No president in history has been a greater friend of the state of Israel than I have, in addition to negotiating the Abraham Accords. I like to say it that way because the real people, that's what they call Abraham. I would say Abraham, but it's so much nicer when you say Abraham. So much more elegant. But the Abraham Accords, they're amazing. Jared, you did that along with your group of geniuses, and nobody thought that could be done. We have 4 countries, and Sleepy Joe Biden didn't do a thing. He didn't even know what the hell they were. He should have had them fold up. But I think this will also lead to packing them. And who knows, maybe even Iran can get in there. I hope, we hope we're going to be able to get along with Iran. I think they're going to be open to it. I really believe that. But they could be a member. I long ago said, I'll bet you at some point Iran will be a member of the Accords. And little did I realize it was going to take this turn. That was some turn we did with the B-2s. But I think they might very well be there because it's a great thing for them economically. I recognize the eternal capital of Israel. I opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. That was something that everyone said would never be done, could never be done. Virtually every president for many, many years, for decades, would campaign on making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. They campaigned on it over and over. Is that right, Steve? Is that right? Everyone, and when they got to it, and I understand why now, because it was so. When I got to office, I campaigned on it too. I said, we're going to make it. And then I'd get calls from the leaders of various countries saying, please don't do it. Please don't do it. It'll end the whole world. Please don't do it. And finally, I just didn't say anything and I did it. People were calling me before I did it because they heard I was going to do it. And leaders of countries were calling me. And I think it was on a Thursday that I did it. And they'd call me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3-4 times a day. And I said, tell them I'll call them back on Friday. And I announced it on Thursday. And I called them back, the biggest people in the world. And they said, you've done it. I said, done what? You've made the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. And we wanted to talk yet. I wish you called me a little sooner. Maybe I could have done something about it. So that was a lot easier than getting into argument, because I knew what they were calling about. And you know what? It turned out to be amazing. Everybody thought it was going to lead to the end of the world, right? The end of the world, Ron. That's what they said. It didn't lead to anything. It just led to something that I promised and something that was very, very popular for Jewish people and a lot of other people too. I recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and I cut taxpayer funding to the corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency. And United Nations was interesting because, as you know, a few days ago, they introduced me. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. I'm looking at my teleprompter, and the thing was dead, stone cold, dead. The thing's up here. I have a long, beautiful speech to make. I'm back 30 feet back, and I'm saying, they're introducing me. There's nothing on my teleprompter. So, but I made a speech. I actually got good marks. You think Biden could have done that? I don't think so. I don't think he could have done that. I don't think too many people could have done it. But actually, it was actually more of a speech from my heart, if you want to know the truth. I think it was maybe better in certain ways because it was from the heart. It has to be from the heart. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. But I cut taxpayer funding for that very corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and nobody thought that would be done, and withdrew from the horrible Iran nuclear deal that was imposed upon Israel by Barack Hussein Obama and Biden. And I don't think Biden knew anything about it, though. I don't think he knows anything about it now, actually, if you ask him. He'd say, what is that? And we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity, making it impossible for them to have a nuclear weapon, which they would have had probably in about 2 months from that. But I've never asked Israel to compromise its security, but we had big, strong talk. Nobody's been better to Israel. No president's been better to Israel than Donald Trump. But we had a long, strong talk, Bibi and I, and he understands it's time. It's time. History has shown, and the people of Israel want it. And the people of the Middle East want it. The people of enemies of Israel want it, but they don't have really too many enemies right now. And you know what? Many countries have gained great respect for Israel, for the way they fight, for the job they do, including me. I had respect anyway, but they gained respect. History has shown us that those who have relations with Israel have thrived, while those who have devoted resources and attention toward the destruction and even annihilation of Israel have languished. They haven't done well. Israel is not going anywhere. They're going to coexist with other people and countries in the region, from Syria to Lebanon to Saudi Arabia. The promise of a new Middle East is so clearly within our reach. This is the closest we've ever come to real peace, not fake peace, not political fool's peace. If we can get this difficult problem solved, the opportunities for all within that vast region of this world, it's a vast region, it's unlimited. The Abraham Accords show that all countries are better off when they communicate and work together and embrace new opportunities. I hope Jared and Steve and Susie and Marco and JD, we have great people. I hope you guys are going to work very hard to get the other countries in, because now they have no excuse. There's no longer an excuse. They were somewhere hesitant. And I tell you, the 4 countries that went in, I give them tremendous credit, and it's worked out incredibly well for them. In the same spirit, I'm pleased to report that earlier today, we took another important step toward greater understanding in the region. A short time ago, we had a historic phone call in the Oval Office with Prime Minister Tani, who's really a great person. So we had a great talk, and I was on the phone, and Bibi was talking. Prime Minister Al Thani was of Qatar. They really had a heart-to-heart conversation. It was a great conversation, I thought. It was productive. It was everything that you need to have something turn out to be successful. And I want to thank Bibi, and I want to thank the Prime Minister. It was fantastic. We agreed to launch a formal trilateral mechanism between Israel, Qatar, and the United States to begin a dialogue to enhance mutual security, correct misperceptions, and avoid future misgivings. And I want to thank Qatar, its leadership, and the Emir. He's a fantastic person. I think, I'm going to be his public relations man because I know him differently than a lot of people know him. But he wants peace. He wants to see peace. And his people, and they really acknowledge the critical role that they've played as mediator. And again, we're not quite finished. We have to get Hamas, but I think they're going to be able to do this. So now it's time for Hamas to accept the terms of the plan that we've put forward today. And again, this is a different Hamas than we were dealing with, because I guess over 20,000 have been killed. Their leadership has been killed 3 times over. So you're really dealing with different people than we've been dealing with over the last 4 years, 5 years. Everyone has done their part and come to the table in good faith. Our Arab and Muslim partners are fully prepared to step up and fulfill their commitments for the benefit of the people of Gaza and the entire region. They're willing to step up and do a lot. They really are. There are a lot of good people involved. Everybody who wants to see an end to the violence and destruction should be united in calling for Hamas to accept the extremely fair proposal so that we can end the war and get us back our hostages right now and have everlasting peace. And I look forward to having relationships with everyone. As the chairman of the board, I'll be involved, and we'll have meetings with some very smart people that'll be working over there to make sure that we haven't just been wasting time with an agreement that doesn't get done. The task of building peace will not be easy. There are some of the hardest problems in the world to solve, and that's why it's been going on for so many centuries. But too many lives are at stake not to try, and this was more than a try. I mean, I think this is something that gets done when you have virtually every country, and these are powerful countries that have a lot of money, and the money can make things happen. A lot of countries try and they don't have any money. These are very rich countries that can make things happen. So together we'll forge a much safer and more hopeful future for everybody, including Israel. And I want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for his partnership. And I want to thank all of the leaders, the kings and the emirs and the presidents and prime ministers, people I mentioned. And they've been absolutely fantastic to work with. And it's just happened very quickly. It's happened from a couple of weeks before I had a couple of meetings, but a couple of weeks before we went to the United Nations, and we had some incredible meetings. It all came to place. It all took place, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. I don't have anybody that's saying we don't want anything to do with it. It's just the opposite. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, a year ago, I don't think we would have had this kind of participation, Mr. VP, right? I don't think we would have had. It's been amazing. The participation was 100%. Everybody wants to be a part of it. And everybody, those very strong countries, everybody wants it to work. So, Bibi, congratulations on this. I think this will be your crowning achievement, frankly. If this all works out, we think it will. It's going to be your crowning achievement. And I want to thank you very much for being here. Thank you, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, first I want to thank you for graciously hosting me once again in the White House. And second, I want to thank you for your friendship and for your leadership. From Jerusalem to Tehran, from the Golan Heights to Gaza, you've proven time and again what I've said many times. You are the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And Mr. President, you and I both know it's not even close. While you focus at home on making America great again, your leadership abroad is changing the world for the better, ending wars and advancing peace. I believe that today we're taking a critical step towards both ending the war in Gaza and setting the stage for dramatically advancing peace in the Middle East. And I think beyond the Middle East, in very important Muslim countries. I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. We would not have achieved this turning point without the courage and sacrifice of our incredibly brave soldiers. They fight like lions to defend the people of Israel, and they serve on the front line in the war between civilization and barbarism. Mr. President, when our two countries stand shoulder to shoulder, we achieve the impossible. Just a few months ago, in Operation Rising Lion and Operation Midnight Hammer, we struck a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. Your bold decision to send those B-2s made the region safer and the world safer. Now, under your leadership, we're taking the next step to win the war and expand the peace. Your plan is consistent with the 5 principles my government set for the end of the war and the day after Hamas. Everybody asks, what is your plan for the day after Hamas? Here's our plan. Pass it in the cabinet. All our hostages, both those who are alive and those who died, all of them will return home immediately. Hamas will be disarmed. Gaza will be demilitarized. Israel will retain security responsibility, including a security perimeter for the foreseeable future. And lastly, Gaza will have a peaceful civilian administration that is run neither by Hamas nor by the Palestinian Authority. If Hamas agrees to your plan, Mr. President, the first step will be a modest withdrawal, followed by the release of all our hostages within 72 hours. The next step will be the establishment of an international body charged with fully disarming Hamas and demilitarizing Gaza. I appreciate your willingness to lead the body, Mr. President. I really appreciate it because you have a lot of things to do, and this is important. And it reflects the confidence that this will give everyone, that things will be followed up on all the commitments made. The fact that you're taking this on, I think helps a lot to make sure that everything flows in the direction that we want. Now, if this international body succeeds, we will have permanently ended the war. Israel will conduct further withdrawals linked to the extent of disarmament and demilitarization, but will remain in the security perimeter for the foreseeable future. I think we should understand that we're giving everybody a chance to have this done peacefully, something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done. All these goals must be achieved because we didn't fight this horrible fight, sacrifice the finest of our young men to have Hamas stay in Gaza and threaten us again and again and again with these horrific massacres. Mr. President, I was encouraged by your clear statement at the UN against the recognition of a Palestinian state. That would be an outcome that, after October 7th, would reward terrorism, undermine security, and endanger Israel's very existence. As for the Palestinian Authority, I appreciate your firm position that the PA could have no role whatsoever in Gaza without undergoing a radical and genuine transformation. In your 2020 peace plan, which you mentioned just now, you made clear what that transformation requires. It's not lip service. It's not checking a box. It's a fundamental, genuine, and enduring transformation. And that means ending pay to slay, changing the poisonous textbooks that teach hatred to Jews, to Palestinian children, stopping incitement in the media, ending lawfare against Israel at the ICC, the ICJ, recognizing the Jewish state, and many, many other reforms. It won't come as a surprise to you that the vast majority of Israelis have no faith that the PA Leopard will change its spots. But rather than wait for this miraculous transformation, your plan provides a practical and realistic path forward for Gaza in the coming years, in which Gaza will be administered neither by Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority, but by those committed to a genuine peace with Israel. I think this can be not only a new beginning for Gaza, I think it can be a new beginning for the entire region. Under your leadership, we can re-energize, well, I've got to contribute my own, we can re-energize the Abraham Accords. That's what it's called in the original Hebrew, Abraham. Abraham is fine, Abraham, however you want to call it. Under your leadership, Mr. President, we can re-energize the Abraham Accords that we forged 5 years ago. We can expand them to many more Arab and Muslim nations that choose moderation over extremism. I think there's an opportunity here. It's not going to be easy. It's tough going, but I think if we succeed, you're absolutely right. We're going to open possibilities that nobody even dreamed of. But I think we dream of them. As you've told me, Mr. President, and you've told the world many, many times, you said, remember October 7th. Remember October 7th. And we do. We will never forget the horrors of October 7th, and we will do whatever is necessary to make sure they don't happen again. Since October 7th, Israel's enemies have learned a hard truth. Those who attack us pay a heavy price, but those who partner with us advance progress and security for their peoples. President Trump just said it. It's also in the Bible. It says, those who will bless you will be blessed, and those who will curse you will be cursed. And that's actually what is happening. We want the blessings. I think we've done a lot in the past 2 years to end the curse. We're not finished, but we've done a lot. And we've done a lot together to end the curse. I want to thank your entire team for their efforts to get to this point. I especially want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for their indefatigable work to bring Israel and Arab states in the region closer together. I am deeply grateful to both of them for their work. We had a phone call today just to make it clear. I said to the Prime Minister of Qatar, Israel was targeting terrorists, wasn't targeting Qatar. And of course, we regretted the loss of the Qatari citizen, wasn't our target. And I very much appreciate President Trump's proposal to have a trilateral body, the United States, Israel, and Qatar, to work out respective grievances. There are quite a few. But if we could try to mitigate them or put it on a different footing, I think that'll be good for everyone. Above all the people, the fine team, many helpers who've done this, I want to thank you, Mr. President. History has already shown that under your leadership, Israel and America can change the face of the Middle East. And today I'm hopeful that your plan to end the war in Gaza will do so again and do so soon. It will free our hostages, end Hamas's tyranny in Gaza, and enable a more secure and prosperous future for the peoples of our region. Thank you, Mr. President. May God bless America. May God bless Israel. May God bless the indispensable alliance between our countries. And may I add in Hebrew, G'mal Chatima Tova, may we all be inscribed in the book of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bibi. So I think while we wait for these documents to be signed and get everybody in line, I think it maybe is not really appropriate to take questions. I'm meeting with, as you know, a couple of Democrats in a little while about the country, about keeping our country open. They're going to have to do some things because their ideas are not very good ones. They're very bad for our country. So we'll see how that works out. But this is something that was really historic today. This was something that was amazing. I think, Bibi, I mean, depending on you, I think while we're waiting for signatures and waiting for approvals from a lot of different countries that are involved in this, we probably shouldn't take questions, or would you like to take a question or two from perhaps a friendly Israeli reporter, if there's such a thing?
That's a very, very tough proposition. But I would think, Mr. President, that I would go by your instinct that this is, we'll have enough time for questions. Let's settle the issue first, I think.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
How long do you have to respond? Hamas leaders in Qatar
All right, welcome back. Yeah, that was. I see people in the chat are very excited in different ways. Very anxious and very upset. I see a lot of people are upset. Let's unpack the whole thing, because if you were listening to my commentary today on the earlier stream and then on this stream, that's pretty much what I expected to happen. It went off almost exactly like I thought it was going to happen, where Trump was going to come out. This is, by the way, what I expected to happen back on February, whatever it was, 4th or 5th, the first time that Netanyahu came, when Trump said we're going to do the Gaza of the Riviera, and everyone freaked out, hair on fire, freaking out. Trump's a traitor. Trump's a Zionist simp. Let me remind you what the aftermath of that entire situation was. The aftermath of that situation, which at first I was like, what the hell is going on? And then the more I stopped and thought about it, and I saw the reaction from around Zionist X, right? Pro-Israel X, I was like, oh, Trump just basically went over to the Shark Tank and just chummed it with a bunch of squid. And now the sharks are all thrashing, like ready to eat. Because all the Zionists came out and said, hell yeah, we're going to take Palestine. We're going to take Gaza. This land belongs to us. full bore ahead. And that's what Netanyahu started saying. And all of them started saying that. And then Trump backed off and said, actually, I'm not really sure about the Gaza of the Riviera thing. And here's a signal. I even posted this. Let me just share this. Let's walk through a few things. I just want to demonstrate that I'm not just like, telling you what you want to hear or gaslighting you or trying to give you hopium. That's not what this is. It's not. I wouldn't waste my time doing this stuff. I posted this on February 17th. Okay, their meeting was on February 5th. Okay, so this was less than 2 weeks after their first meeting, and I said one of the many reasons that I thought that President Trump's boisterous rhetoric about making Gaza the Middle East Riviera was a ploy is that this language was already used by Trump's very close and dear friend, by Trump's dear friend, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as the official branding for the Amala development, which is a tourism site on the Red Sea announced by the Saudi Public Investment Fund back in 2018. The first hotel on the site just opened last year, 2024. The Middle East Riviera already officially exists, and it's in Saudi Arabia. And here's the article from the Daily Mail, September 26th, 2018. Saudi Arabia plans to build a Riviera of the Middle East in bid to become a global tourism destination with high-speed trains linking its holiest cities. By the way, they've already built the high-speed trains. They have over 500 miles of high-speed trains. China helped them build it. They now have another 5,000 kilometers of high-speed train in construction right now. So they have high-speed rail. We in America do not have high-speed rail yet. So if you think Saudi Arabia is some backwards like country, they have better infrastructure than we have in America. We are a third world country in terms of public transportation compared to Saudi Arabia. So let's look at a few other things because, again, like I want people to understand that this is important to wrap your head around what we just watched. So back on July 29th, I posted, how foolish do you think Marco Rubio and Tammy Bruce feel right now? While Daddy was away in Scotland, Rubio and Tammy took it upon themselves to skip this two-state confab because they said it was a PR stunt designed to subvert the peace process. It was announced on December 3rd, 2024, the signed declaration. Now the U.S. has missed a historic opportunity to sign on to this document that was demanding that Hamas surrender to the Palestinian Authority. And the best part is that they waited until after Tammy Bruce's press briefing this afternoon to announce this. So she went on camera and attacked the conference on the record. And for those who haven't followed my shows and don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to when Tammy Bruce went on let me see. Tammy Bruce went on her like press briefing, and for whatever reason this thing isn't pulling it up. But she came out and she viciously attacked this thing called the New York Declaration. What we just listened to, guys, is called the New York Declaration, okay? And I will play you what Tammy Bruce said on this. She said, here it is. Stand by for processing. I said to pull it off Telegram because the X search function was not working. Okay, so back in July, the French and the Saudis organized this meeting in New York City at the UN, where the 17 Arab countries came together with the Palestinian Authority and the Arab League, and they all signed this declaration, or they were working on like a negotiation. We didn't know what the negotiation was going to be, but this was when Trump flew to Scotland. Remember when he flew to Scotland and he forced Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, to come to his mansion in Scotland, and everyone was making fun of Keir Starmer for being a little bitch because he had to come see King Trump in Scotland instead of Trump going to London and seeing him. While Trump was doing all that, Marco Rubio and Tammy Bruce were viciously attacking this confab, as they called it, in New York City. So watch what Tammy Bruce says right here. She's reading a a press statement that she had put out the day before. At this point, she was the State Department spokesperson. Ardent Zionist, hardcore Zionist.
Serving as host to an unproductive and ill-timed conference on the so-called two-state solution in New York City. This is a publicity stunt that comes in the middle of delicate diplomatic efforts to end the conflict in Gaza. Far from promoting peace, the conference will prolong the war, will embolden Hamas, and reward its obstruction and undermine real-world efforts to achieve real peace. As Secretary Rubio has made clear, this effort is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th and a reward for terrorism. It keeps hostages trapped in tunnels. The United States will not participate in this insult, but will continue to lead real-world efforts to end the fighting and deliver a permanent peace. Our focus remains on serious diplomacy, not stage-managed conferences designed to manufacture the appearance of relevance. Also, the United
Okay, so she just comes out and she disrespects Basaudi. She says that they are basically Hamas simps. She says that this is a gift to Hamas. Whatever it is y'all are working on over there in New York, you're all a bunch of terrorists and you're all basically working for Hamas and you know, F you. That was her message there. This went live when I was doing my show. I think it was on a Tuesday. I was doing my show on my geopolitics show, and I kid you not, 15 minutes after she says this during her little press briefing, 15 minutes later, this happened. And I think they were waiting. I think they knew she was doing this press briefing because she had put the exact statement out the day before. So the press briefing was pre-scheduled. So I think they knew she was going to read this statement at the press briefing. They waited until after she made the statement, and then they released this. Okay. This is from the Times of Israel, this headline. And I wrote, the Arabs just signed a declaration with France and other European countries demanding that Hamas surrender to the Palestinian Authority and allow the Palestinian government to assume control of Gaza before it is annexed by Israel. The Zionists will say this is awful because their plan all along, of course, was to kill everybody in Gaza and take their land for Israel. That's why October 7th was allowed to happen. And then here's the screenshot that I pull from it, where literally in the language of what's now called the New York Declaration, their demands are, they condemn October 7, like the attack. They condemn Hamas. They demand that Hamas surrender all their weapons to the Palestinian Authority, the other government in the West Bank, and that the leadership leave Gaza forever, and that they release all the hostages, and then they have no role in the government moving forward. Okay. Everything that Trump just spelled out in the press briefing right there. And I said at the time, I even put out a post saying that Tammy Bruce should resign immediately because there's no way she can ever speak with credibility on behalf of the State Department or like the U.S. government ever again. She's a clown. 2 weeks later, she was fired from the State Department. Now, they didn't call it a firing. She was promoted or reassigned to the UN delegation, which this was July, this would have been early August at this point. She's still awaiting confirmation for that position. She's still technically not a part of the position. And by the way, you know who else was transferred to the UN delegation, like the UN representation body? Mike Waltz. Remember him? The guy who got fired back in April for Signalgate. He's still waiting confirmation as well. So, and the UN General Assembly wraps up today. So the two people who got reassigned to the UN delegation, the U.S. delegation to the UN, still have not been confirmed, and the big annual meeting is wrapping up today. They got fired. Trump just let them save face by not calling it a firing. And by the way, Morgan Otagus, who's like Tammy Bruce 2.0, she stood up at the UN last week or 2 weeks ago and made the exact same. She read Tammy Bruce's statement and basically insulted the Saudis, insulted the Arabs, insulted all of Trump's friends, said they were all terrorists, humiliated herself. But again, what Trump does, if you understand who Donald Trump is he puts these people on the stage. This is what he used to do on The Apprentice. I knew nothing about The Apprentice. But then for the Book of Trump episode about The Apprentice show, I went and watched a few episodes. And Trump says in the show 20 years ago, he says, What I like to do is I like to take people and put them on the spotlight and see what they do. Can they handle the pressure, or do they crumble, and are they weak? Are they weak or are they strong? And I want to see what kind of people they are under pressure. That's what Trump likes to do. So he puts the people on the stage. They fail tremendously. They humiliate themselves. Tammy Bruce will never work. I mean, assuming that we are able to pull this parasite out of our society, out of our civilization, the Zionist parasite, Tammy Bruce will never work again, like in politics, I don't think. I mean, I think she's totally humiliated herself to that extent. Now, let's go back to, I see people asking questions. And if you have questions, throw them in the chat, and I'll try to address as many as I can. So let's start with them not taking questions at the end, because that's the most recent thing. Did you not see the way Trump handled that? Trump was like, you know what? We're not going to take any questions right now. Unless, BB, of course, you want to take questions. Do you want to take any questions, BB? Maybe we can call on a very pro-Israel, pro-BB Netanyahu reporter, who can give you a real meatball, a real right down the middle meatball that you can hit out of the park. And BB Netanyahu goes, well, I defer to your expertise and your opinion, Trump. No, we're not going to take any questions. Trump just humiliated Netanyahu. He gave him the opportunity to stand in the breach and take a question, not from a Al Jazeera reporter, but from like a Fox News, like Bibi Netanyahu simp, and Netanyahu wouldn't even do that. That's pretty humiliating in my opinion. All right, so the next one is I saw somebody do a super chat, a rant, where they were asking about the Abraham thing, because that was kind of a weird thing. The final demand, $10. Is there any significance to the way Trump pronounces Abraham? He says Abraham, not Abraham, Abraham. Yeah, I thought that was weird too. I went and started looking up, like, how do you pronounce Abraham in Arabic? It's pronounced Ibrahim or Ibrahim. No, it's not. That wasn't that. Okay, how do you pronounce it in Hebrew? And then Netanyahu provided that for us at the end. He said, you say Abraham, it's actually Avraham. So you replace the B with a V in Hebrew and say Avraham. I don't know why Trump did that. I don't know what the purpose was of him saying Abraham. He said it sounds very elegant. I have not been able to find anything, like just looking for a few minutes, for the significance of that, but it did kind of trigger Netanyahu to the point where he was like, I'm going to say Avraham. It had nothing to do with Israel or Arabic. Maybe there's another reason, but very strange. Okay, but let's get back to like the core of what just happened there. Trump spoke at length. Bibi Netanyahu barely said anything at the end. He spent a very long time building up who all the people involved. He named all of his friends, which again is a slight to Tammy Bruce and everything that I just went through with Tammy Bruce, because Tammy Bruce called all these people terrorists. She disrespected all these people. He talked about the Saudis and how important they were. He talked about how good of friends he is with Tamim from Qatar, from Abdullah, with the King of Jordan, ABZ, who's Abdullah bin Zayed. That's the prime minister of the UAE. MBZ is Mohammed bin Zayed. He's the president of the UAE. He's the reason that MBS is crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Remember, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia have pledged over $5 trillion into the U.S. economy. And Qatar then came back later and said, we're actually going to do $10 trillion over a much longer time period. So $15 trillion from those three countries over the next however many years it's supposed to be. I think Trump now boasts that it's $17 trillion in all from various countries, like when you factor in Japan and a few other countries. But we know 5 trillion, 5.7 trillion or whatever, it like in writing from the Arabs, from those three Arab countries, the three Arab countries that Netanyahu and his people have been disrespecting. $0 pledged from Israel. Zero. I think that means something, by the way, to Trump. He then comes out and he talks about, he lays out exactly what the New York Declaration is. I've read the New York Declaration. You can find it online. It's a written document that was signed by all the countries that I listed before, plus the Arab League. And Trump made it very clear. Israel is going to pull out of Gaza. And then Netanyahu comes in and he clarifies and he says, okay, we're going to do a modest pullout first. It's going to be a modest pullout. Remember, Bibi Netanyahu is trying to save face with his the radical zealots that he has to go home and answer to now and explain to them, who I already went and checked. They're freaking out right now. They are pissed that Netanyahu did this. A modest pullout of Gaza, and then they release all the hostages at once, and then staged pullout, like staged withdrawal from there. Look, what's going to happen is there's going to be a false flag. Like Netanyahu and his friends are going to try to subvert this. But you heard what Netanyahu said. He said Trump is the greatest friend that Israel's ever had. Nobody's ever been better to Israel than Donald Trump, right? So all the narrative shielding that Trump needs moving forward is there. Nobody is ever going to question that Donald Trump bent over backwards for Israel, gave them everything they wanted and more, did everything that they asked of him pretty much, except for allowing them to annex Palestine. And no one's going to accuse Trump of being an anti-Semite in the future. Like you can't at this point, right? Is there any chance that Netanyahu and his friends are going to go along with what was just laid out? Absolutely not. There's 0% chance that we're going to have peace in the Middle East as far as they're concerned. 0% chance. Because once the war is over, remember what happens. Netanyahu loses power. They're going to hold new elections. They're going to vote in a new prime minister who also is going to want war with Iran. And his zealots, the guys who are in his security cabinet, Bezalel Smotrich, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel Katz, these ultra-Orthodox radicals know that they are never going to be in this position ever again, because none of these more moderate people, the enemies of Netanyahu, even the guys who agree with him ideologically, but just think he's an asshole, none of them are ever going to appoint these ultra-Orthodox radicals to be in the security cabinet. So they know that it's in their best interest to keep Netanyahu in office too, even when they claim, like, they threaten to like leave office or like resign and cause the government to collapse. So what's going to end up happening is that Netanyahu and his friends are going to try to find a way to subvert this. There's going to be a lot of like screaming at one another in the media. Ben-Gvir is going to call Netanyahu a pussy. He already has. Bezalel Smotrich is going to call Netanyahu a pussy. He already has. Go look at it. It's on the Times of Israel. We read it right before the speech. Right here. Smotrich compares Netanyahu's apologies to Qatari PM to Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain, according to like official history, was the pussy that allowed Britain to almost be destroyed by Nazi Germany, right? You heard Trump also confirm that during the speech. He was like, we had this wonderful phone call with Qatari Prime Minister Al-Thani, with Tamim, the Sheikh Tamim, all right, who's Trump's old friend. And him and Netanyahu spoke. He didn't say Netanyahu apologized to him, but he affirmed that the reports that Netanyahu apologized to him happened. And here's what Smotrich, this is Netanyahu's finance minister. Netanyahu's, quote, groveling apology to a state that supports and funds terror is a disgrace, Smotrich tweets. So there's going to be a lot of domestic infighting in Israel when Netanyahu gets back there. And now I think he jumps on the plane and he's going to fly home. We'll see all that play out this week. But what Trump just laid out is he laid out the New York Declaration. He backed the thing that Tammy Bruce and Morgan Ortagus and Marco Rubio and all these neocon Zionist bastards at the State Department spent the past 2 months shredding. And by the way, every single time they put out those public statements where they were disrespecting the Saudis, Trump was always in Britain. Trump was always out of town. It was like daddy was away, and while daddy's away out of the house, that's when the kids are gonna get into all the trouble. They're gonna go into his liquor cabinet. They're gonna do all the bullshit. And Tammy Bruce has already been fired over it. Now I think, are we going to see more people be reprimanded? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. The point of that whole exercise, though, is to show all of us there is no negotiating with these people. You're never going to be able to negotiate with Tammy Bruce or Morgan Ortagus. I'm not sure the State Department is redeemable. It doesn't seem redeemable to me at all. None of these peace deals that Trump has put together have involved the State Department. It's been Qatar Steve Witkoff has said that. Steve Witkoff, who is Jewish, by the way, has said Qatar is actually the reason that all of these peace deals you're hearing about around the world have happened with the help of Trump's old friends from business, Steve Witkoff, Tom Barrack, who is it? Mossad Boulos, Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, Bowler, right? Adam Bowler. Those are all the people who have been piecing all these peace deals together on behalf of Trump. And then Marco Rubio in the State Department comes in and tries to take credit for it at the very end, but they haven't done a damn thing to make any of that stuff actually happen. Okay, let's see some of the other stuff that they talked about. Let's see what so if you go online right now and you look at what Mark Levin has been saying, if you look at what like Laura Loomer has been saying, they call Tucker Carlson, right? They're talking about how evil Qatar is. They talk about how awful Qatar is. They talk about how Qatar is our mortal enemy, how Qatar controls our government, how Qatar, all the things that actually Israel is, they project and say Qatar is. I think Trump made it very clear during the first 10 minutes of that press conference, 15 minutes, that he has a very soft place in his heart for Qatar and that Qatar actually are his friends. And y'all should probably stop disrespecting his friends. Now, why is Trump doing this? Because I see people who are frustrated with this. Now, I expected Trump to do this back in February. I expected Trump to come out and say, we're going to work with the Arabs. We're going to get Hamas to surrender to them. We're going to allow the Arabs to take control of Gaza. It's going to be under their stewardship. Israel is not going to be involved in running Gaza, but he didn't do that. Instead, he did the whole like Gaza Riviera thing, and that then led that enticed Netanyahu and the Zionists to basically put on the water skis and jump the shark and say things that they would have never said before. Remember after October 7th, Netanyahu was like, I'm the two-state solution guy. I want two-state solution. We want peace. Israel wants peace. Israel wants peace. I was on Badlands Daily on October 3rd, 2023, warning everybody that we were about to see a false flag event because we were this close to Saudi normalization with Bibi Netanyahu. So Trump says in there that he wants he said, all the pressure now is on Palestinian Authority. I want to see the Palestinian Authority. But first, Hamas has to accept the deal. They probably will. But again, Hamas is a creation of the deep state. Hamas is a creation of Netanyahu. When the Palestinian Authority pulled Hamas's funding in 2018, Netanyahu is the one who stepped in, got money from Qatar, and then gave them $32 million every month, walked it in briefcases into Gaza, and gave it to the families that he knew would then give it to Hamas to keep them propped up, because otherwise they would have been financially insolvent and they would have gotten eaten alive by the starving people in Gaza, right? So the Palestinian Authority capitulating to the 2020 terms, he's talking about the Abraham Accords. Now, the Saudis, the Qataris, and the UAE have all said one thing, and the Saudis have made it very clear. We are not going to have peace in the Middle East unless the borders of Palestine are restored to 1967 borders. And if I show you let me show you what the borders look like right now. Because the board, like they draw it on the map, but the way it's shown on the map is not what it actually is. Okay, so here's Mark Levin. Okay, so Mark Levin is getting very, very upset because Lindsey Graham says when it comes to terrorist threats, Israel must be allowed to defend itself and finish the job. Like this is from this morning. They're all saying that because Lindsey Graham is responding to the Axios article we read earlier. Trump plans to squeeze Netanyahu and sign Gaza peace deal, aides say. Lindsey Graham is saying there is no way that we can allow this to happen. While I strongly support to end major military operations in Gaza and moving toward a new Middle East, it is imperative this is accomplished the right way. I do not support ending major military operations if it means that Hamas is not eliminated forever and does not ensure that there will never be another October 7th. From my point of view, Israel is not the problem. It is Iran and its proxies that are the problem. And then Mark Levin reposts it and says very wise. And then Levin says, who are these White House insiders trashing Israel and Netanyahu all day? What's this? A White House insider shows up in Mediaite and Axios earlier. Now Tucker's mentioning it. Tucker's central in the vice president's office. They despise Netanyahu. I truly hope it's not them, but it's clearly someone. So who is it? They're undermining the president. They're pushing a propaganda campaign. Not a word from the insiders about a single terrorist group or terrorist country. Just Israel, Netanyahu. This is a scandal. So no, look, now they're fixing their sights now on the people in Trump's administration. They want to sniff out who the Netanyahu haters are. Okay, you have to understand there's a reason why Trump is being delicate as he moves through this whole situation, because the people who recognize the problem that Israel is, they recognize how powerful it is. You got to recognize how powerful these people are. You got to recognize that these people do control the levers of power, not only in the U.S., but in other places as well, and that they do have the power to take you out if they want to. And I think Trump is hyper-aware, self-aware of not only his safety, but the safety of the people he cares about. Like, that is the sort of ruthless, sort of mafioso situation we're dealing with. Here's Levin saying, here's the plan. Reposting an article from, or a post from Rapid Response 47. It says, President Donald J. Trump's comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. Gaza will be a de-radicalized terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza, who have suffered more than anyone, or more than enough. If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will end immediately. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed-upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended, and the battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for the complete staged withdrawal. Within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Once all hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7th, 2023, including all women and children detained in that context. Pretty ridiculous that they were taking women and children prisoner. For every Israeli hostage who remains released, Israel will release the remains of 15 dead Gazans. 6, once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. Upon acceptance of the agreement, full aid will be immediately sent to the Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the January 19th, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including rehabilitation of infrastructure, rehabilitation of hospitals and bakeries, and entry of necessary equipment to remove rubble and open roads. 8, entry of distribution. Well, let's see, how many are there? Looks like there's 20. I don't know if we want to read through the whole thing, but let me just kind of summarize a few of these. So we are at 8. Entry of distribution and aid will proceed without interference with the two parties under the Red Crescent. Through the UN and the Red Crescent, which is the Arab Red Cross. 9, Gaza will be governed under the temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, that's a weird term, a technocratic apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services and municipalities for the people of Gaza. I wonder why they're using the word technocratic. That's very strange. My guess is that it's because these are going to be remote. They're going to be remotely governing. It's going to be people from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan. Those will be the ones. Like, there won't be people on the ground actually governing. The people on the ground governing will be maybe a security force that the Arabs issue. I don't know. We got to ask questions about that. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts with oversight and supervision by a new international transitional body, the quote-unquote Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by President Donald J. Trump, with other members and heads of states to be announced, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Very strange that Tony Blair is involved. Although Netanyahu hates Tony Blair. I think everyone should take note of that. This body will set the framework and handle the funding for the redevelopment of Gaza until such time as the Palestinian Authority has completed its reform program, as outlined in various proposals, including President Trump's peace plan in 2020 and the Saudi-French proposals. So there you go. They're citing the New York Declaration right there. Suck on that, Tammy Bruce. 10, a Trump economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities in the Middle East. Many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development of ideas have been crafted by well-meaning international groups and will be considered to synthesize the security and governance frameworks to attract and facilitate these investments that will create jobs, opportunity, and hope for future Gaza. 11, a special economic zone will be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. My guess is that there's going to be a tariff to move stuff into Gaza. The tariff collection will be given to the Gazan government. No one will be forced to leave Gaza. This is important. Number 12, no one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. We will encourage people to stay and offer them the opportunity to build a better Gaza. That is proof right there that what Trump said on February 5th was kayfabe. He didn't actually mean it. 13, Hamas and other factions agreed not to have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. All military, terror, and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapon production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. 14, a guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and the factions comply with their obligations. They're talking about ISIS, comply with their obligations, and that new Gaza poses no threat to its neighbors or its people. 15, the U.S. will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force to immediately deploy to Gaza. There you go. The ISF will train and provide support to vetted Palestinian police forces in Gaza, and will consult with Jordan and Egypt, who have extensive experience in this field. This is interesting. So they're talking about an Arab security force going into Gaza, so the IDF has no reason to be there. And it's important to remember that in 1947, when the Nakba occurred, that was when, the Israelis went around and started killing all the Gazans or all the Palestinians and driving them out. And then the UN partition plan happened, which created Gaza and created the West Bank. The West Bank became a protectorate of Jordan, and Gaza became a protectorate of Egypt. Egypt had a police force in Gaza, and they had a zero tolerance policy for the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is an MI6 proxy militia that was created by Britain to foment radical Islamic terrorism around the Middle East. That's the whole point of the Muslim Brotherhood. And if they caught anyone even professing, even talking about the Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza, this is Egypt doing this, they killed them. They had a death sentence for anyone who was even promoting Muslim Brotherhood ideas, even non-peaceful, even non-violently, peacefully. Egypt had a zero tolerance for Muslim Brotherhood because they knew that it was a subversive Operation Gladio type vehicle. The moment that Israel took over Gaza in 1967 after the 6-Day War, they immediately said, in the name of free speech, in the name of humanitarianism, we're going to allow the Muslim Brotherhood back into Gaza. And then 20 years later, Hamas is created by the Muslim Brotherhood. So, it's very obvious what's going on here. 16, Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. As the ISF establishes control and stability, the Israel Defense Forces will withdraw based on standards, milestones, and frameworks linked to demilitarization that will be agreed upon between the IDF, ISF, the guarantors, and the United States, with the objective of a secure Gaza that no longer poses a threat to Israel, Egypt, or its citizens. Practically, the IDF will progressively hand over Gaza territory it occupies to the ISF according to an agreement they will make with the Transitional Authority until they are withdrawn completely from Gaza, save for a security perimeter presence that will remain until Gaza is properly secured from any resurgent terror threat. 17, in the event Hamas delays or rejects this proposal, the above, including the scaled-up aid operation, will proceed in the terror-free areas handed over to the IDF, from the IDF to the ISF. So the full military support that everyone was freaking out about during the speech, we're going to give them full military support. Yeah, full military support in the event that the British-backed, Muslim Brotherhood-backed Hamas, and remember, Hamas hates the other Arab governments. Like, Hamas hates the Palestinian Authority. They tried to kill the Palestinian Authority's prime minister in 2018. The Palestinian Authority is the one trying to establish peace. it says right here that they're going to actually militarily back the ISF, not the IDF. So that needs to be resolved. Like, that needs to be fully adjudicated. But it actually sounds like the full military support is still going to go to the ISF, not the IDF. But again, I think all that's just posturing. It's just posturing. Like, if you don't do what we say, because you know what that message is really for? The message isn't for Hamas. The message is for all the other Gazan and Arab people who are like, hey, we want the IDF to leave Gaza forever. Well, if you want the IDF to leave Gaza forever, tell Hamas to put down their weapons, turn the weapons over to the other Arabs, because if you don't, you know, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu want to annex Gaza and turn it into Israel. So if you don't want that to happen, kick this British-created terrorist group, Hamas, out and bring in the ISF, the Arabs, and let the Arabs rebuild Gaza for other Arabs, as opposed to the Israelis going in there and building it for Israelis. 18, an interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try and change mindsets and narratives of Palestinians and Israelis by emphasizing the benefits that can be derived from peace. Yeah, well, you know, the Israeli settler movement is going to have to be addressed because they are the real terrorist organization involved in this whole thing. 19, while Gaza redevelopment advances and when the PA reform program is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. There you go, guys. When Trump said, you know, those other countries were foolish to recognize Palestinian statehood, they're saying right here, while we go through this process, we're going to give a credible path to Palestinian statehood. So he's not like, this is a far cry from what he said in that speech and what people were saying back in February and Gaza Riviera, you know, but now we know what Netanyahu's all about. Now we know what Bezalel Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and all them are all about. And the last one, the United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. Okay, so here's the map they give us. The blue is the IDF current line of control. Okay, so the yellow is the initial withdrawal. So they're going to pull back initially. When Netanyahu says we're going to do a modest withdrawal, they're going to move. Right now, they're at the blue line. They're going to move to the yellow line. And then once they move to the yellow line, they say, all right, release the hostages. And then once they release the hostages, they move back to the red line. It's a second withdrawal when the ISF mobilized per standards and the Trump plan. So they stay at the yellow line once the hostages are released. And then once the ISF, which they say is going to deploy immediately, comes in, the IDF moves back to the red line. The ISF comes in and fills in from the red line to the Mediterranean Sea. And then it says the third withdrawal, the security buffers. Then they move back, and Netanyahu said, we're going to maintain a perimeter, a security perimeter, secure our borders, which is what, you know, we talk about in America all the time. This is all in theory. Like, let's see the Zionists actually follow through on this. Let's see Netanyahu actually be able to pull this off without like all the zealots in his security cabinet skinning him alive for agreeing to this, because they want Gaza. They've already said that. They've already said Gaza will never be under Arab control. It will always be in Israeli territory. That's an interesting little read. And then let's see what Laura Loomer's saying, because I'm always interested in seeing what the different factions, the different people who, here we go. 9 minutes ago, Laura Loomer, I'm very confused. If the Palestinians are such innocent people, why did the peace plan have to include a terror-free zone for the Gazans? Are you telling me Palestinians are terrorists? Yeah, and then now she's just arguing with people about what, here she is. Gaza will become a terror-free zone. Never has been and never will be. All you have to do is read the Hamas charter to know these people will never commit to peace. I encourage every American to read the Hamas charter. Yeah, Laura, the only problem is that we just got done discussing how Hamas isn't going to exist anymore. It's going to be dismantled. The leadership's going to leave Gaza. Anyone who fought in the ranks of Hamas is welcome to stay as long as they commit to peace. Okay. The question is, Laura, is Israel going to commit to peace? I'm a lot more skeptical about that. very skeptical about that. All right, so let's and I don't know if I was sharing my screen or not when I was reading all that, but here is the map. I was just reading through like copy. So I was reading through copy of this. Here is what the map looks like. The blue line's right here. The yellow line is right there. And then the red line's right here. So they currently are occupying the blue line. The yellow line is where they're going to pull back to when their hostages get released. And then the red line is where they pull back to when the ISF security force comes in. So the security perimeter, this like hatch line, is where Netanyahu says they're going to maintain a security perimeter, like secure their borders. They've had that since 1967. That's been the standard in Israel since 1967. But the map that I was going to show y'all was this. So like they draw this line around the around the West Bank, but really the orange is actually what the Palestinians kind of control. The rest of that area is all like Israeli settlement. Like they really don't have all of the West Bank. A lot of the West Bank is actually under Israeli settler control. Okay, so let's see what other questions people have in the chat. Okay, from GG with attitude, and yes, I saw, or GG with attitude, $5. I saw you ask this, and I said I would address it, so I'm going to address it. Awesome coverage and commentary. What is the significance of the F-35 pin? Thank you, Ghost. It's a really, really good question. Let me pull up Trump and Erdogan. So Trump and Erdogan, when they met, Erdogan and Netanyahu do not like one another. They've threatened to kill each other a number of times. Okay, look at this. This is from last Thursday. Remember, Trump invited this guy, the president of Turkey, to come to the White House the day before Netanyahu's speech, and then he signs a nuclear deal with Turkey, something that made the Israelis, particularly Netanyahu, apoplectic, because they say that no Muslim country in the Middle East should have nuclear power. Look at what Trump's wearing right here. This is the first time we've seen Trump wear this little pin. He's wearing the F-35 pin right there. Okay. Now, what is the significance? Well, as I went through, I'm not going to do the full dig here, but as I went through on my show on Friday on Geopolitics with Ghost, we negotiated a deal back in, I think it was either 2016 or 2017, to sell F-35s to Turkey. The deal was done. Okay. In 2017, 2018, when Trump's president, we actually brought Turkish pilots over to Arizona and like maintenance crews, and we were training them at a air base in Arizona to repair F-35s, to fly F-35s, everything you would need to have an F-35. And then at that point, I think the deal was for them to get 2 F-35s, just 2. But because of some like pastor who was arrested in Turkey, we said, you can't have the F-35s anymore. Well, that pastor got released in October of 2018. Erdogan released him, like pardoned him, released him, sent him back to the U.S. And then the excuse after that was, well, you bought these air missile defense systems from Putin, and we're worried that if we give you the F-35, the Russians are going to hack like the defense systems they gave you, and they're going to figure out how to defeat the F-35, and we can't have that, so we're not going to give you the F-35. Last year, in January of 2024, Congress finalized a deal with, because the other thing they were talking about in this meeting was F-16s, F-35s and F-16s. As far as I know, the F-35s haven't been delivered, but maybe they have, but they haven't publicly announced that. We negotiated a deal where Turkey bought 40 brand new, like fresh out of the factory F-16s, in addition to 79 modification kits for existing F-16s that they have. Now, the F-16 is a very small, very fast fighter jet. It's like the premier dogfighting, like air combat to air combat jet. That's the jet. It's the most commonly used fighter plane in the world. There's over 2,000 of them. I think Turkey has 200 of them. That's what I read. Turkey comes back a few months later and says, we don't need the 79 modification kits because we figured out after doing this maintenance program with the U.S. on the F-35, we figured out how to modify these F-16s to the point where we don't need the modification kits. We're going to save the $20-some billion on that. Just give us the 40 F-16s that we ordered. Here's a $1.8 billion down payment. They paid us $1.8 billion as a down payment, and then we started producing the F-16s. That was April or May of 2024. Bloomberg, as of yesterday or as of Friday, is reporting that this F-16, these 40 F-16s are still being negotiated, by Trump and Erdogan. That is wrong. Unless they're negotiating a new deal of 40 more F-16s, Bloomberg is wrong. They need to go do their homework. We actually finalized the deal. Congress sent a letter. Let me see. Congress sends a letter. I'll end it here. Congress sends a letter to Turkey on F-16s. Here it is. January 25th, 2024. Turkey welcomes Biden's F-16 letter to Congress, expects positive conclusion. So Biden sent a letter to Congress saying, go ahead and approve this because under U.S. law, Congress has to approve these kind of military deals for 40 new F-16s and nearly 80 modernization kits for Turkey. And sorry about that. I had a weird technical glitch. Let me pull my screen back up. Boom. There it is. Okay. Now, it was Congress approves. And then here you go. January 29th, 2024, U.S. approves $23 billion worth of sales of F-16 warplanes to Turkey. The sale follows Turkey's decision to ratify Sweden's NATO membership. Now, you might remember that there was this thing where Sweden wanted to join NATO, like they wanted Sweden into NATO because they thought that would help start a war with Russia. And Erdogan capitulated, and he was the deciding vote. And he said, okay, yes, Sweden can join NATO. This is the reason that he ended up doing it. So once Erdogan ratified Sweden's NATO membership, that was when Congress said, okay, we approve your the F-16s now. You can get your F-16s, and yes, we're good. And then they paid a $1.8 billion down payment to I think it was Lockheed Martin. The point is that these fighters are important because of Syria. As the point I made earlier, that if you want to stop Israel in Syria, you got to get Turkey in there to fly against them. And then here's the State Department, because they also have to approve it. Here's the State Department approving the F-16 sale. So this has definitely happened. They formally notified Congress that they had approved. Happened again. Sorry about that. Probably time for me to get out of here. I keep hitting the back button on the wrong tab. That's why that's happening. So anyway, I think we've kind of beat the dead horse here. If there are any other questions, throw them in the chat. Let me check and see if there's any more rants or boosts or anything. Looks like we got some the real JJ14 now, a monthly supporter. Welcome, JJ. Appreciate your support. Everyone, please hit the thumbs up. Yeah. So, in summary, I'm pretty, oh, Susie. Okay. Susie, Halo Daisy. You asked about Susie. Susie Wiles. Okay. So I don't know if you know this story about Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles is like a fixture in American politics. So yeah, like when she became Trump's chief of staff, that was a little concerning because it's like if anyone's going to be deep state, you think it might be Susie Wiles. I don't know if you knew this story about Susie Wiles. I have two quick little stories about her, but we've talked about this on Badlands many, many times. She was sent in, Trump in 2018 sent her in to Ron DeSantis's 2018 campaign to become governor. Okay. Here's an article from The Independent. I got to reshare my screen. And I got to share it on screen. Boom. Okay, so here is from The Independent. This is from November 8th, 2024, inside the war between Ron DeSantis and Trump's formidable new chief of staff, Susie Wiles. So what it goes on to explain is that in 2018, when Congressman Ron DeSantis from Florida announced that he wanted to run for governor, Trump, who was friends with Susie Wiles, sent her down to Florida to hire her as, or for her to work as his, his campaign manager. She ran his 2018 campaign. Okay. It says right here, but the relationship between the Florida governor and Wiles deteriorated once he was riding high post-election and she was ousted from his administration and for a while Trump's 2020 campaign. So after DeSantis was running like campaigns where he was dressing his baby up as like in MAGA gear and being like, I love Trump so much, vote for me. She then joins his administration once he wins as the Florida governor. Then there's a falling out between the two of them. And she leaves. And then later in the 2020 campaign, because DeSantis was working on the Trump 2020 campaign, DeSantis actually goes and gets her fired from the Trump 2020 campaign. And you're about to find out why. Like, you're about to find out why Trump allowed that to happen. Quote, this guy really hates you, end quote, Trump said to Wiles privately, according to a source privy to the conversation the New York Times reported. Quote, the only person who ever really had a problem with her is Ron DeSantis, the newspaper quoted another source. Rewind to 2015 when Trump first met Wiles during the Republican presidential primary. She became the co-chair of Trump's 2016 Florida campaign on the recommendation of then Governor Rick Scott. So she helped Trump win Florida in 2016. And they maintained a relationship after that. And then that's when Trump plugs her into DeSantis's campaign, make sure that Ron wins as governor in 2018. So 2020, when she gets fired from the Trump 2020 campaign, like under the protest, the demand of Ron DeSantis, because he hated her for some reason, what happens? Well, she then turns around with, this is what just came out like a few weeks ago. And she goes over to All Places. This was reported back in June. I got to archive it because it's behind a paywall. It says Trump aides once helped elect Netanyahu, reflecting leaders' deep ties. Okay. Now, this Independent article back here goes on to explain that when Trump ran against Ron DeSantis in 2024, because remember, DeSantis came out and announced in like March or May of 2023, was it 2023? Trump comes out all deflated after the midterms because the Republicans didn't get the red wave. And everyone's like, oh, now's the time to pounce. We got to take out Trump. We got to get a new, Winsome Sears, the lieutenant governor from Virginia, comes out and says, we got to get behind DeSantis. Trump is done. We got to get behind DeSantis. Susie Wiles then comes back, joins the Trump campaign, and according to all these different articles, she had all the intel about DeSantis. She knew all about DeSantis. She knew about his inner circle. She basically was what Sun Tzu describes as a local spy. That's what Sun Tzu describes 5 different kinds of spies in the army, like in like any military. And one of them is called a local spy. It's when you go and you recruit somebody from the local area who knows the lay of the land, who knows everything, to go into the enemy camp and then come back and report to you. Susie Wiles has been a long fixture in Washington, D.C. She's a longtime political, figure. Trump sends her into DeSantis' campaign in 2018. She helps him win. She then comes back in 2024 and feeds Trump all the intel he knows to defeat DeSantis in the primary. Because remember, there were a lot of people who thought DeSantis should be the like way more people than I would have ever guessed who thought DeSantis was a better candidate than Trump. Well, it turns out the same thing happened with Netanyahu in 2020. Trump sends Susie Wiles after she gets fired from his campaign. He then says, you should go work for Netanyahu in Israel. He needs a lot of help. She goes to Netanyahu's to Israel, and she helps get Netanyahu elected. And remember, if you're not familiar with that whole political crisis in Israel, from 2018 until 2020, they had no government because every time they would hold an election, it was basically Netanyahu and Benny Gantz running against one another. And one election, Netanyahu would win, and then he couldn't form a coalition. He couldn't get 61 Knesset members to back him. And so the government would dissolve before it was even formed. And then basically 3 or 4 months after holding an election, they would hold another election. It's like 3 to 6 months, however long the time period is. So basically every 6 months for about 2 years, they had 5 elections in 2.5 years, I think it was. They had 5 elections in Israel because Netanyahu would win, couldn't form a government. Benny Gantz would win, couldn't form a government. Netanyahu would win. And it was like ping pong, back and forth throughout the whole Trump, like half of the Trump term, the first administration, there basically was no government in Israel. The only reason that they finally formed a government was because of COVID. COVID happened, and then Netanyahu goes to Benny Gantz, his like political rival, and says, "Hey, Benny, in the spirit of like unity and like coming together, why don't we form an emergency government? And you can be the alternate prime minister. I will take on the burden of being prime minister. And we can basically work together to run Israel for the sake of the people." And Benny Gantz says, okay, for the sake of, the Israeli people getting through this terrible pandemic, I will agree to that. Okay. And then they hold an election and Susie Wiles goes in and, not only is it Susie Wiles though, it's Corey, Lewandowski and this other guy, Tony Fabrizio. Okay. Trump's longtime pollster. So those 3 people go in and they help Netanyahu after this emergency government is established, win the actual election. So he is then installed as prime minister. Now his government ends up collapsing in sometime in 2021. And then that's when Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett take over for about 1.5 years. They become alternate prime ministers. But what's interesting now is that now Susie Wiles has come back and she's the chief of staff. She knows everything about Netanyahu's inner workings. She's been in the war room with Netanyahu. She knows everything there is to know about this guy. So is Susie Wiles a good guy? Is she a bad guy? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. She has the intel on Netanyahu, and you got to think that to some degree, she's feeding that to Trump. Anyway, we'll have to see what happens, but right here, it says, a person familiar with their time in Israel said Wiles and her team were brought in to consult on Netanyahu's campaign and create a voter database, but left quickly after Likud, Netanyahu's right-wing nationalist party, could not afford their services. President Trump and Bibi worked, quote, President Trump and Bibi worked closely on a lot of things. They were strong allies, the person said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. When asked why Wiles and the team went to Israel, it wasn't hard to convince them to go. Okay, well, there you go. It says if the campaign of 2016 taught us anything, it's how to mobilize a base, sell a candidate to the people, and mow down the electoral competition, wrote Lewandowski and David Bossie, Trump's 2016 deputy campaign manager, in the 2020 book entitled "Trump: America First: The President Succeeds Against All Odds." Quote, so just a few hours after we touched down in Israel, that's exactly what we did. So they went and they built a whole database and understand the entire makeup of the Israeli people and electorate or whatever. That's pretty useful information for Trump to know as he navigates Israel and manipulates their political landscape. Here's what's really interesting, though. So Trump sends these people, his own campaign people, to go into Israel to help Netanyahu win this election. Listen to what he tells Barak Ravid during that December 2021 interview. Listen to what he tells the Israeli people about his view on the 2020 campaign. This was his take, because the 2020 campaign, again, was Netanyahu versus Benny Gantz.
Bibi Netanyahu, before the ink was even dry.
You know, that's actually, the volume on that is pretty bad. Let me see if I can upload it and play it. Y'all are going to be able to hear it way better if I do it this way. So Trump is like backing Netanyahu to Netanyahu's face. He's giving them his best people to run his campaign. Meanwhile, this is happening in the background. Let me check and see if any other things are coming up in the chat. I'm waiting for that video to load. This is going to be an easier way for y'all to listen to it. Come on, hold for processing. Come on now, StreamYard. All right, here we go.
So, Benny Gantz, I really liked him a lot.
Really?
I thought he was great. He came to the White House, and he was somebody that, in my opinion, it would have been much easier to make a deal with the Palestinians.
Much easier than with Netanyahu, or much easier
than with Netanyahu? The Palestinians hate Netanyahu. They hate him with a passion. They did not hate Gantz. They didn't hate him.
And how did you find them on a personal level?
I liked him. I thought he was a really impressive guy. He loves Israel. I just didn't know what happened to him.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I heard that that at a certain period of time, Bibi was going to leave and he was going to take over. All of a sudden, we're into a new election. I liked the general a lot. I thought, in fact, I said to you, Jared, and David, if he became, if he became the guy, if he won, I think it would be a lot easier. No, I don't think Bibi ever wanted to make peace. And I say that, I think he just tapped us along. He just tap, no, we want to. I think with Bibi, peace. Now look, Bibi is Bibi. But I think Bibi did not want to make peace. Never did.
So very interesting things for Trump to be saying to the Israeli people. I mean, for those who think Trump's naive and like he doesn't understand Bibi Netanyahu, I think he explained pretty clearly right there. He does understand Bibi Netanyahu. He understands Netanyahu is just leading him along, tap, 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 tap. But he's sitting there saying, yeah, I think if Benny Gantz had won in 2020, it would have been way easy for us to do the Abraham Accords, to get peace with the Arabs. Would have been a way easier process. Okay, so then why did he send Susie Wiles and them to go work on the campaign? Allegedly, they were only there for a short time. None of that makes sense. My guess is that Susie Wiles and Lewandowski and them were gathering intel, which they brought back to Trump, and Trump's now using. And Trump right there is telling the Israeli people that he likes Benny Gantz more than he likes Netanyahu. And that Netanyahu doesn't want peace with the Arabs. So, it is what it is. But that just goes to show you that there are many faces to this, and that Trump is playing the cards close to the chest, and he's not telling the American public everything that he thinks about the situation. He is manipulating the situation. I think most people recognize that. A lot of people think he's manipulating it to better Bibi Netanyahu, for the betterment of the Zionist cause, but I think it's actually quite the opposite. So, all right, guys, with that said, okay, and I see Sagittarius in the chat. I have to go find this. It says, senior Hamas officials, Netanyahu and Trump are playing a trick on the Palestinian people just like they did with Iran. I mean, maybe Hamas is going to say that because Hamas doesn't want to leave power. But, you know, I think that, again, the problem is that when you fall into the fake paradigm, the controlled opposition paradigm of Hamas versus Israel, Hamas versus Israel is like saying Israel versus Israel. Hamas was created by the same people who created Al-Qaeda and ISIS and every other in the Muslim Brotherhood. All of those things were created by British intelligence, MI6, which also created the CIA and Mossad. So you have to understand that before you start getting into the who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. You know, the earnest actors who are actually trying to make sure there is a Palestine like nation at the end of all this is the Palestinian Authority. Hamas does not care about a Palestinian state. Hamas cares about a war with Israel, which will ultimately lead to Israel annexing everything and making everything greater Israel. So if you actually care about defeating Israel, you have to understand that Hamas is an obstacle to doing that. And Bibi Netanyahu wants Hamas to remain in power so that he can have an excuse to go in there and conquer everything with the military. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I'm going to play a quick ad from Soft Disclosure and then sign off. So I will see y'all tonight on the Book of Trump. I'm having Lieutenant Colonel Oak McCulloch on to talk about war fighting, which is this book right here, FM1, the U.S. Marine Corps Field Manual for War Fighting. It's going to be a really good conversation. So I will see y'all then. Hit the thumbs up. Appreciate y'all being here.
Deodorant should do more than cover you up. It should protect you all day long.
Dude, the deodorant stick is legit. I like the mint one. And, you know, you go work out and you kind of get like, you know, you get funky if you work out. Dude, like at the end of my workout, like I'm sweating, shirt got all those sweat. Like I'm like, dude, I still smell good. Like I absolutely love it. If you guys haven't tried it, try it.
That's the difference with Soft Disclosure. No aluminum, no chemicals, just clean, natural ingredients that fight odor and keep you fresh through every workout, every meeting, every moment.
I've always struggled with the, like, you can't use aluminum deodorant because you're going to die if you use it kind of thing, because all of the non-aluminum deodorant products suck pretty much. Yeah. This is different. This is all day. You're all day good, and you're not putting any of that disgusting chemicals right near your lymph nodes.
Soft Disclosure deodorant, real protection, real freshness, built on truth. Available in mint and lemon grapefruit. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Soft Disclosure.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.